And we are live. Welcome to the stream, everyone. This should be a fun one. We got a Reaper format locals. We got someone hosting a Reaper for right now. Getting that local Spectre bird. What are you doing? But yeah, it should be a fun one. This is looking to be a pretty big locals overall. About 14 people so far. So 13 here, but it seems like one person's signing up in the Reaper Discord, or not the Reaper Discord server, but the YGO from Zero Discord server, where if you want to play in any of these local events in the future, that's the place to do it. But I think right now, we've got 14. So we're going to be starting this thing off. Okay, yeah, time to start the tournament. Did I not do it right? Do I need to do it again? This is what I want to do. There we go. And let's just shuffle up the seeds there. And yeah, let's get this locals. Let's get this started. So we got the bracket there, and it should be a fun one. I'm looking forward to seeing what people will bring, because Reaper is a format where there's a lot of different decks you can bring. Of course, Stein Monarch is very, very oppressive and stuff. Memory Crusher, I will be banning it for the big tournament, but I figured for the locals, I didn't think anyone was going to bring Memory Crusher. If they do bring it, then, you know, let me know, and we can sort of litigate it on stream. Honestly, I'm much more terrified of someone bringing success probability 0%, because that card is definitely the one that, you know, is a lot more problematic in my opinion, just from like how you actually implement that on a manual simulator like Dueling Book, when you don't actually have a full sort of extra deck of all the fusion monsters there, and you don't have a way to randomly select of those extra fusion monsters there. So yeah, I'm a bit terrified that anyone brings that, but I think in the future we'll try and just like ban them. I'm not sure if we use Retrobot to set up these tournaments and do these tourneys. It just makes organization a lot easier, and it's a very good tool for that. But I'm actually not sure if that's been updated to like sort of have those banned. So we might just have to do sort of like a shadow ban on it. Just be like, well, you know, you can't play Memory Crusher or success probability 0%. And if you do, you know, I mean, your deck will be disqualified maybe, but I mean, for the locals like this, it shouldn't really matter. It's just for the big tournament where it might. But yeah, let's go another locals exactly, Dylan Ramirez. I'm excited for this locals. It should be a fun one. Dump starting with a set pass. We got Hida coming down here. Okay, familiar possessed monsters, new beaters from, I believe, Elemental Energy is when they came out. But yeah, very cool stuff. I wonder if Hoy's playing the Charmer package with these, or just playing a pure fire deck, maybe playing a deck with Kurenai in it as well to inflict burn. We saw that in Cyber format when I was covering that. Hoy actually came up with a very cool burn deck using a bunch of fire monsters, big beefy fire monsters here. And that might be what they're on here too. And if they're up against Stein Monarch, it's honestly not a terrible... Oh, Dust Shoot's really good here if you're up against Stein Monarch. But if you're up against Stein Monarch, it's not that bad to go for a fire strat like this, because, you know, you can potentially burn your opponent down to below 5,000 really quickly, and that's just off Stein. So we're not sure what dump truck is on here. We will have more Reaper videos coming. Don't worry, Dylan Ramirez. They will be coming. I should have one coming out tomorrow, which should be on Warriors. And then after that, my Sunday video, I'm planning on having just like something going over the results of the Cyber tournament that wrapped up recently, and, you know, sort of doing a tier list for that. But we will be having a bunch of Reaper videos next week as well. I really love this format, and I'm excited to show off more of it. So a lot of fun stuff on the way, don't worry. And, you know, one of the nice things about holding these locals is that you can sort of see decks that people come up with and be like, huh, that seems really interesting. Maybe I should cover that on the channel. So we might get that sort of thing here in this locals. BrainCon for the Hida is going to be pretty rough. But honestly, what Monarch can you bring out here? Oh, Thestalo. Well, yeah, Thestalo is going to be pretty good there. Because I was like, if you've got Zaborg or Mobius, you can't really do much on this board. But Thestalos, really good. Yeah, ripping the heavy out of hand, so you don't have to worry about that if you're dump truck here. You might play around Mobius, though. Although, given that they're on Hida, they're probably not on Mobius. They might be on Thestalos, but they might not be on Mobius here. Looks like they're going for Snatch Deal on the Thestalos, and if they've got like a Kurenai or something like that, that can be really good value here off that Thestalos. Tripping off the Thestalos for a 2400 poke. And it looks like there's the Thestalos there, so, you know, this is potentially going to rip a card out of hand, although Dump Truck is thinking they might have something here to do with this. It looks like they're going to go for TT. They'll still discard the Zaborg there, so they'll take a hefty 500. Not 600, just 500. Yep. And should be good. CS says, I think since GOAT has a lot of popularity, people do not like the formats after it because their favorite cards are banned there, and Stein OTK is the assumed tier 0 deck. I think that is somewhat true. But although I will say that actually one of the initial draws of Reaper format and why it got so popular a while ago, I think they probably didn't swing with Thestalos first because they were worried about like an MST in the macro, and maybe Dumbstruck just held it for like thinking that Hoy didn't have Thestalos to pair with it, and they just used in the battle phase to potentially force Hoy to summon out a monster and conflict there. But I do think that in general, I think if the Snatch goes through, you can feel pretty safe about not having to worry about things like MST or something like that, because most experienced players just fire the MST right away because they know that you're generally going to be able to convert off that Snatch shield there. But yeah, it's looking pretty good for Hoy, dropping Dumbstruck down to 3K, and it seems like they've got a Monarch deck here, 2 back row as well, so if Treeborn Frog ever hits the field, it could be a little bit awkward for them here. But yeah, it's definitely a very interesting matchup for sure. And Impachi, one of the weaknesses of it is that it has 0 defense, which a Treeborn Frog can beat over if they just summon out a Treeborn here. But it looks like they're going to go for Soul Exchange. That's going to be met with a Kurenai. This is part of the power of the Spiritual Arts. All the Spiritual Art traps are cards that tribute a monster that you control to do something powerful. And while that may seem like you're going like 2 for basically 1, oftentimes it is a 2 for 2, because oftentimes you just chain it to something like a Soul Exchange or a Snatch Shield or any number of things that could be targeting that. And so you get additional value off of it as well. This is a very scary spot for Dumbstruck to be in, though, because they're down to 1150, and if Hoy is playing an aggressive burn deck, there are many ways they can potentially win from that position. Cyberstein, very interesting here. Are they going to go for the full send on the Cyberstein? It's kind of awkward at this point because if you go for something like Ryu Senshi to shut off traps, it doesn't really do much there because you can't pay the 1,000. So honestly, it might be the best just to attack in with Cyberstein, deal 700. There isn't really much you can burn your opponent with from the extra deck. So yeah. Oh, it looks like Ben either got Stein OTK'd or they pulled off the Stein OTK. But yeah, that's classic in this event. Yeah, it is indeed the good last will. As well. So, yeah, rough stuff. Stein OTK is a powerful combo, but it looks like they just went for the Stein attack there. I think that is correct to do, dropping your opponent down to 450. Oh, Mobius popping that cylinder is a bit unfortunate, though, but I do think this was the correct thing overall. And there are plenty of ways that Hoy can come back from this and win this for sure. So, Hoy's got to think about exactly how to maneuver around this, though. Hein KZ says, BLS is fine banned after GOAT. It's a card that belongs in DM era. About Trinity, Pog could have been left unbanned like in the OCG. Chaos decks become trash in this format without their best card. Yeah, I think Pot is honestly something that could potentially have come back here. I know that there's been some discussion in the YGO from Zero Discord server. Oh, and there's the end of that game there. So Burn closing out pretty quickly. But I know there's some discussion in the YGO from Zero Discord server about future formats like Chaos Return, where they actually unbanned Graceful Charity for some unknown reason. But so they unbanned that, and it was a big disaster, basically. Like, very, very rough stuff. And, like, people were talking about how, like, it honestly would have been better if they brought back Pot, because Graceful does a lot more for these decks than Pot does. Just seeing so many new cards into your deck is so powerful, even if you have to pitch too. Especially for a lot of these combo decks, they just want to see as many cards as possible to fix their hand, right? So it makes more sense to keep Pog in than Graceful Charity, because Pot of Greed, while it is a free +1, and a lot of people don't like that, it generally is more fine than something like Charity for sure. But yeah, Snatch Steal, I'm kind of shocked that Snatch Steal is around, like, still in this format. Because it is so powerful with Monarchs, and Monarchs are very easily one of the best decks in the format. And I feel like they knew at the time that Monarchs were one of the best decks in the room. So it's kind of wild that they gave Monarchs such a powerful tool, but I guess they weren't expecting a lot of these OTK decks. And I think at the time there weren't like too many of these like super all-in OTK decks. So Snatch probably was like, well, your opponent snatches your stuff and brings down a Monarch, but then you snatch their Monarch on the following turn. So it's somewhat balanced there. But yeah, I will be happy when Snatch Steal gets banned, because that is a very busted card for sure. But looks like this game is very, very different from the first game that we caught. I guess those tokens are scapegoat tokens, and there's only one scapegoat in this format. Looks like Kesh is playing probably more of a Chaos deck. So I guess we'll get to actually see how powerful Chaos is. Because I do think that Chaos is somewhat good in this format. Definitely does take a different form than in GOAT format. There's no Chaos Turbo in this format, for instance. But it's still pretty good. So I'm curious to see how it does here. And also, of course, there are tons of Chaos Return decks that are running around still doing pretty well. So we have to see what happens here. They do have Lights and Darks engraved. They've also got a Demock engraved, which is very powerful against Mystic Tomato if you're able to bring it back off something like Premat or something. But it looks like that will not happen. They're just going to set one pass back to Lalo here. Now, the scapegoats are nice because even if Lalo gets out like, Stein goes for Cyber End, if they don't have limiter removal, which is limited in this format, it won't really do much here. They're going to go for a Breaker. Breaker can pop that back row. Can't be another Scapegoat since Scapegoat is limited here. Could be like a TT, could be something like that. But if it is a TT, then Catcher's got to lose a lot of cards on the board. So that's a bit awkward for them here. Looks like it's a call. Okay, so I guess the decision here was you fire call on the Demock, but that misses timing if you do that, I believe. Because the last thing that happens is the call's destroyed and the Demock will be destroyed. So it won't actually get its effect because it is a when you can effect. Dark Hole here is going to be pretty good, cleaning up that board, wiping away the Tomato and the Breaker there. And it looks like Catch is going to bring out a Tomato of their own, hit in for 14. And it seems like things are kind of back to the start here. While both players do have a lot of graveyard setup, both players do have approximately like 5 cards to play with here. There could definitely be a Stein OTK combo coming pretty soon here. So that's something to look out for if you're Kesha, but honestly, this might have been the only real choice that you had, You can't just waffle and wait for the Stein OTK to come. You got to sometimes just get aggressive, bring out the Tomato attack in. Soul Exchange is going to be pretty decent here, but it's a bit awkward because, Mobius can be brought out, but you're not losing any spells or traps from that. It's just a big beater. I think the Dark Hole is kind of interesting, Dylan. I think that, on the one hand, it is somewhat balanced, right? You have to wipe both sides of the field. So as we saw here, Kesha had to wipe their own scapegoat tokens as well to use that Dark Hole. And so in some ways it is balanced. In other ways, it definitely is incredibly busted because you're never going to activate Dark Hole if it doesn't benefit you in some way. So you're going to maneuver into positions where your Dark Hole is really good. So, it's not the best thing in the world. It's not the most balanced card in the world. In addition, Dark Hole can trigger Last Will, which is very powerful for Stein OTK decks and things like that. So it makes it a bit awkward there and gives them another just very powerful tool to combo off. So I'm not the biggest fan of Dark Hole in this format. I do think it's it's not bad. A lot of people give it credit for, but it also is worse than some people give it credit for, right? It's sort of like a middle ground card where it's if it's bad, it's really bad. But if it is balanced, it's pretty balanced, So whether you want a card like that in the format or not, that's up to individual taste and things like that. But looks like Benel might get OTK'd again. Main phase 2, it's a bit harder to get OTK'd. We might see an OTK here from Lalo, though. Someone out that's a Borg, and that's Kedge is going to scoop it up. They don't even need to see the Stein. There was a potential world where Lalo drew all the Stein to their deck in the hand. They're just bring out Reaper or something. But, Kesha saw the writing on the wall. And so, that was not going the best for them. Let's try and dive into the Benel game just to see what they're doing here. Oh, this is okay. Okay, we got a battle of the interesting decks here for sure. Okay, looks like an insect deck, which I am a bit of a fan of the insect decks here. But looks like it's up against an elemental hero deck, which is very, very cool. Bring out Thunder Giant, popping the ultimate insect level 3, preventing the ultimate insect level 5 from coming out in Milucha Gerbil's following turn here. Very powerful play there for sure. But if there's a Call of the Haunted, then that can do stuff there. Looks like the Thunder Giant's going to attack in for 2,400. And does Benel have anything else here? Nope, looks like they're just going to pass back. Will goes back to 1 for next format. I think that it does. I'm pretty sure it does, which should curb the power of a lot of these sort of Stein OTK decks quite a bit. They'll still be pretty good, but, with only 1 Will, they become a lot worse for sure. But Kamakiri is going to be fine. Oh, creature swap here. Going to be pretty killer if Ben Elabs does not have a way to actually get around that. It looks like they're going to overlay the Thunder Giant and the Kamakiri. I mean, this is a pretty easy game state to, revert back to the correct one. You just give the Thunder Giant and then give the Kamakiri. It is Wind. I'm so excited to show off the Wind deck. I have quite a brew cooked up for this format with it. I've actually topped some tournaments with. So I'm excited to show off Wind. I figured I wanted to show off the like really meta decks in the format first to get context for like, why the Wind deck can compete in it and other things like that. But Wind is really, really cool. I really like the deck. I think that Kernai is super cool. It looks like Dumptruck lost to Hoy. So showing the power of that aggressive burn deck there. Hoy moving on to the next round there. But, kind of, well, not an upset because Hoy's a very, very good duelist as well. But Dumptruck has made it to the finals and won a lot of these locals in the past. I'm pretty sure they're the players who won the most locals. So them getting out in the first round is a big thing. So very, very cool stuff. Congrats to Hoy for knocking them out there. But it looks like there is a question here. TT can indeed be used unless it's in the battle phase. If it's in the battle phase, it cannot. So you can't use TT if it's like, so for instance, in this case, you cannot use TT because it's in the damage step, right? But next turn, if, Miley Gerbil brings out a level 5 off this level 3, then you can use it. But right now you cannot. So hopefully that helped. But yeah. Damage step rulings are very strange. But it looks like this Ultimate Instinct level 3 will hit in there for 14. And it looks like Gerbil's just going to pass back to Ben Labs. A bit of an awkward spot to be in. Now, you can potentially hit over the level 3. But the fact that Gerbil's is willing to bring that out means that they probably have something for it. So there's got to be some way to protect it in that back row there. Yeah, a bit awkward to be sure. I love Ultimate Instinct level 3's face. I think it's so cool. But Costas Georgiosopoulos asks, what are the tier 1 decks in this format now that Chaos Turbo is gone? There is a lot of debate about this because, when you have a deck like Stein OTK in the format and very good, some people rank it, higher, some people rank it lower. Some people say that Stein OTK is like a tier 1 deck. Some people say it's tier 2. I would say it's tier 1. Basically, whether it's Stein Monarch or it's another Stein deck, just decks that can turbo out Stein with Last Will are very, very powerful here and will be tier 1, but they're not uncontested. You have also got Bazoo Return, where you use Bazoo Soul Eater, banish a bunch of monsters from graveyard, then go for return plays at the end of the game. You've got Monarch, as Hoy mentions. You can either build the Stein Monarch version, which I mentioned before, or you can just do a pure Monarch build, which has also seen success here. And I would honestly say Monarch is probably tier 1 until Phantom Darkness. Based on my understanding of the game's history, that could be wrong. I haven't played the formats after this in a modern sense, but I would believe that to be the case because the deck is so strong and does have Treeborn Frog in this format. Warriors, of course, is very good, although some people say that Warriors is basically just a downgrade from Bazoo Return because Bazoo Return does a lot of things that Warrior does, but it's also a little bit more explosive sometimes. So there's a lot of interesting tier 1 decks. Stall decks in general have also seen success. And so you could consider them tier 1 as well. I'd probably consider them tier 1 right now, but that definitely could change in the future. Because stall decks are also a bit interesting because, it's like, when those decks win, is it because people don't know how to play against them, or is it because they're actually very good? Because a lot of the time, stall decks can sort of win based on like, well, my opponent doesn't know how to play this matchup, or they don't have the side deck cards there. So it can be a bit awkward there. But, you never know. Okay, it looks like Aratos won against Duck as well. Unfortunately, I wanted to see Duck's game there, see what they were on, because they are an OG Reaper player. But unfortunately, that's how the game wrapped up. Yeah, I sort of just jump around these games, just looking from one to the next just to sort of get a lay of the land. But maybe Duck will post her list in the Discord in the future. But, yeah. Still, there are a lot of very interesting decks that have not really been tested or, iterated on beyond just initial tournament success. For instance, Light Banish actually won a Reaper tournament in the past. It went undefeated, I believe. So just a deck playing like Freed and playing some other light monsters and stuff and just taking advantage of that. So that is a very interesting deck that not many people have tried to sort of iterate on and build on. So that deck could potentially be tier 1 in the future. Rescue Cat OTK, probably tier 1 as well. There's a lot of very interesting decks running around this format, and despite the large amount of people playing in these formats back in the format's heyday, I would still say there's a lot of open-ended questions about the tier system for it. But Miracle Fusion coming down here. Miracle Fusion is honestly the reason to play Heroes, in my opinion. It looks like Dean lost against Chef Steph Curry. So Chef is going to move on to the next round there. But yeah, I think Miracle Fusion is just a busted card in this format. And it allows you to sort of do things that a lot of other fusion decks are not, where you don't have to use up resources that are in your hand or field. You can just use them from the graveyard, which allows you to go into some powerful fusion monsters. Of course, the elemental hero fusions are not necessarily as good as other monsters in the format, but the fact that you can go into them without as many resources is pretty nice. And I will be playing a version of heroes in this format. Not sure if I'm going to lean more into the sort of resource-oriented version that I played in Cyber format, or if I'm going to lean into like Wildheart control, because Wildheart is such a cool card that you can also build decks around. Wildheart honestly might just get its own video because it is just so cool. And there actually have been decks in the past that have topped with it. I believe Alto Clef topped with a warrior build playing, Wildheart, Gravity Bind, like a bunch of powerful traps that Wildheart can get around. So very cool stuff there. And I'm excited to show off that as well. Dylan asks, be honest, do I like Reaper more than Goat? I think that's that is a very tricky question for me because in general, I don't sort of rank formats against each other. I know I ended the Cyber Local stream, or not Cyber Locals, but Cyber Final stream, asking people about where I rank Goat versus Cyber. And I would say if I had to rank Goat versus Reaper, I would say it depends on what you're looking for. For me, I have a lot of nostalgia for Reaper format. So because of that nostalgia, like that sort of bumps up the format for me. But I do think if you're looking at a competitive standpoint, right, and you're looking for just formats that are extremely, extremely skill intensive and stuff like that. I think Reaper is skill intensive, but it tests different skills from Goat format. I think a lot of people like the skills that Goat tests more than the skills that Reaper tests. I think in Reaper format, you have to really know when to go for damage and not to go for damage. Tempo matters a lot in that sense. I also think that like deck building is a big thing because Stein OTK is running around. How much do you main deck against Stein OTK? How much do you not? And that's a very interesting question as well that changes given the tournament that you're playing in Reaper, given the play group that you're playing against as well. For instance, if you're playing in a locals format like this, I would guess that there are a fair amount of people who are not really on the Stein Arc stuff because it's a local tournament, sort of a more casual thing. So you probably just have a couple people on it. So do you main deck just a ton of hate for it, or do you go with something a bit more interesting? And I think so far we've seen a lot more interesting things. But yeah, as CS says, there also are some other benefits to Reaper outside of just like, the nature of the format itself, where if you play Goat a lot and you are tired of Chaos Turbo mirrors and stuff and the dominance of Chaos Turbo, then you probably will like Reaper a lot because Reaper Chaos Turbo is not really a thing. Chaos is a thing, but you don't have Chaos Turbo being dominant, and the sort of quote unquote dominant deck, which is Stein OTK, which is sort of in everyone's minds, is a bit less consistent than you might expect. So I do think that there isn't really a tiers. Well, I wouldn't call Goat tier 0 by any means because Goat is not tier 0 in my opinion. But like what I'm trying to say is like there's no real like super dominant deck. While the Stein stuff is, frustrating if you face it and you just lose immediately, it's inconsistent enough to keep it out of like the super top tier levels of gameplay a lot of the time. And so that means that you are potentially playing other more interesting decks a lot of the time. And because it is, I do think, a bit less explored of a format as well, I think you'll have more opportunity to deck build and do interesting things. So yeah. And unfortunately, as Ben L says, you still do see Stein sometimes, but that game too was also against, more the insect side of the deck as well. So Stein is a thing that people do tech in a lot. But it definitely isn't like the only thing that you'll be seeing for sure. Yeah, and any deck can splash it. So getting to below that 5,000 life point threshold is important in all these games. But, I do think that it's not as dominant as people make it out to be a lot of the time. And through good play, you can sort of, play around the Stein stuff as best you can. Last Will enables decks to act as Stein very, very quickly. So yeah, it is good to know about. So it looks like we got PJ versus Gerbil, Aratos versus Model, and Imeska versus Chef Steph Curry. We haven't seen Chef, but let's try and. Are they not playing yet? They might not be playing yet. But yeah, Drain Shield's a bit of an interesting option. There are other ways that that can also sort of fight against that. So it looks like Model won this game, so I'm going to put that in there. And Model versus Aratos is going to happen. PJ versus Gerbil is going to happen. So depends on what people want to see. But Stein format does not have Stein banned. Yeah, Stein format actually has 3 Stein as well. I actually have played in a Stein format tournament. And, by saying Stein format, we're not talking about, just Reaper format having a lot of Stein in it. We're talking about a format called Stein format that happens much later. And, even then, people are like, well, it doesn't really have as much Stein in it as people might expect. But I did manage to make it to 2nd place on a Stein build in that tournament. So, it does still come up, still very powerful for sure. But yeah, exactly, Hein KZ. Reaper is really, really aggro, much more fast-paced than Goat, and aggro decks do need to adapt to that. Cyber Dragon is around, so you need to be able to get it out a lot of damage. So playing things like Cyber Dragon in your Warrior deck, playing things like that to just get the damage on early is very, very good. And so you're exactly right, Hein KZ. And it is something that some people don't really like about the format, that you have to, sort of play that mini game in the beginning. But I do think it does introduce another interesting aspect of things. So, looping back around to, the beginning question, which one do I prefer, Goat or Reaper? I would probably say that, in my heart of hearts, I probably would say Goat is the correct answer. But I do think that you can enjoy multiple formats, even if one you like better than the others. I think the nostalgia for Reaper for me, the sort of refreshing change of pace compared to things like Goat, does make it a very, very fun format for me, and I really do enjoy it a lot. So I enjoy both Reaper and Goat format, and honestly, most formats that I've covered on my channel. There's something to love about every format in the game's history, I think, and there's going to be formats that appeal to certain players over others, and so a format that you like or don't like could really appeal to someone, and a format that they like might not appeal to you. But that is exactly the reason why you got to try out as many as possible, in my opinion, just to sort of get a sense as what you want in a format and which formats are the best for you. As I do think that throughout the game's history, the pace of play changes a bit. Combo decks become dominant, control decks become dominant. Things change a lot over the course of the game. And, I do think that there's something to love in most of the game's history in most of their formats. So, going to that mindset is a good mindset, I think. Just give every format a chance. If you don't like it, you don't like it. There are going to be formats that you don't like. But, yeah, I mean, Rainier, I do... Joey Pegasus is definitely one of the formats that I don't like as much. I think I've been somewhat vocal about that in the past. Where, to me personally, Joey Pegasus does not have what I'm looking for in a format. I think it's just a little bit too saggy for my opinion. But I also do acknowledge that some people really like Joey Pegasus. And they will actually be having a tournament sometime soon, which I will be joining because I would like to see it grow more. And I do think it is pretty interesting to see. So, Dylan Ramirez says, I wish more formats had ban lists like Reaper. I like how they banned 10 cards and completely threw the format on its head. And yeah, it's really, really cool to see them sort of take the meta in Goat format and completely change it around, try and kill Goat Control, which, to be fair, Goat Control is already not doing the best in modern Goat format. So, did they really need to kill it? Well, at the time, historically, it was doing better. So, it makes sense why they hit it so hard. But BLS being gone makes Chaos Turbo not really a thing in here, even though other Chaos decks are. But the Chaos decks that are around are a little bit more fair. So, okay. So, TT on that Reaper brought out off of a last will here. And that's just going to end Lalo's turn. So, very, very interesting play there. But yeah, I mean, it is sad that Goat Control is a bit, sort of kicked out of the way in this format. But I will say, if people want a, format that plays like Goat, but does have Goat Control in a very good spot, I would recommend Warrior format. I think it is pretty good. And yeah, as Raynan says, remember to like the stream. It really does help a lot with the visibility and just a lot of other YouTube metrics, which, it is good for growing the community even more. And, the larger we grow the community, the larger these tournaments become, and, the more exploration of these formats we get. So, yeah. So liking the stream goes a long way. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, definitely subscribe as well. And it looks like Catchers does not have Darkblade the Dragon Knight actually in their extra deck on Dueling Book exactly. But, you can always proxy it in, so that's why they asked for a copy from Lalo there. Yeah, and it looks like Hoy says, I do not dislike the ban list outside of limiting Meta, Scapegoat, and Comfy. And yeah, I think those are common complaints. I think more people would like for Metamorphosis to be more playable in some fashion. Also, the 1,000 restrict limit is probably enough. And Meta has a lot of interesting applications outside of that. For instance, going into Darkblade the Dragon Knight. Darkblade the Dragon Knight, really, really cool card. Banishes cards from the graveyard, so you're able to get out those pesky Treeborn Frogs. And so there are just a ton of things you can do with Meta, especially with Cyber Dragon going into a Dark Balter is really cool. But yeah, I mean, it looks like this Dark Blade, the Dragon Knight soloed there a bit. So yeah, Heavy unfortunately did not do anything against that Raigeki break. Oof. And a Dark Hole in hand on top of that. So yeah, unfortunately, it did not work out the best for Lalo here. But still very, very cool games. So it looks like Kesha's going to be moving on to face Hoy in the next round. But yeah, Divine Wrath, very interesting tech that is around in this format that people can play with if they want to. So that'd be really cool. I don't think we've seen either Ratos' deck or Model's deck. So let's just dive into that, see what's going on here. And it looks like Model's probably on Warriors, I would assume. I think the Snatcho probably took the Mobius there. And so it looks like Ratos is probably on Stein deck. And yeah, it looks like that's going to be the end of game 2. So it looks like these games probably went pretty quick. Ratos won game 1, Model won game 2. And I mean, this is a pretty classic matchup that you'll see in this format. Warriors is pretty good against Steinarch. Now, the thing about Steinarch as well, in addition to the combo being so powerful, I do think that it is a very easy deck to pick up in this format, which is part of why it's so popular and so dominant. When you play a deck like Warriors, you really do need to be thinking like at all times how you navigate your game state. Whereas with Monarch, you know, the best Monarch players do definitely have to think a lot about what they're playing. But if you just pick up a game with Monarch and you draw a God Hand, you can just win the game on the spot, right? Whereas with Warriors, it's always a bit more of an uphill struggle. So I do think that both decks are very good. But it's sort of like Chaos Turbo, where like a lot of people say like, well, Chaos Turbo, part of the reason why it's so dominant in GOAT format is because it is one of the easier decks to pick up and play. Not to say that the, you know, masters playing it at the highest levels are, you know, just having an easy time of it, because they're not. They're thinking about all their plays that they're making. They're making very intentional plays and very skillful plays. But I do think that like at the base level, if you're getting into the format, Steinarch is a great place to start. And, you know, there are just some hands that play themselves. And that can make for a very popular deck. So again, not saying that that is, you know, that Monarch is unskillful, because it definitely is a deck that can take a lot of skill when you don't get the hands to play themselves. But I do think it is a much more easier deck to jump into the format with. CS says, I think DDV should have been at 2 in this format. Honestly, I kind of agree. Like, what's DDV really going to do? What decks can take advantage of it? Dark World could probably take advantage of it, but Dark World kind of needs the help because they're not the best in this format. I guess Warriors could take advantage of it as well with Zambira, but Zambira's a bit worse now that Cyber Dragon's out. So I do think that DDV could probably be at 2 and still be fine. Maybe even at 3. Yes, it is a bit of a degenerate card, but I think it's ultimately pretty fine. Also, if DDV hits like Treeborn Frog, you're feeling fine about that, right? So yeah, I think DDV is definitely a card that could be perfectly fine in this format and more copies. But it looks like Erasure is going to set 3 pass after confying the hand. So they knew the hand, they knew about the Zalug there, which is why they went for the full 3 set there. TTing the Zalug to stop that from coming through, and a Comfy coming down as well. So this explains why they set even more beyond just the TT there for sure. Yeah, meta could have also probably been semi'd. I think that it's not necessarily the like best card in the world in this format. And again, as I mentioned, it can open up for some interesting play patterns. But maybe they were afraid of the Treeborn Frogs just coming back and then going into a Restrict. Maybe using Avarice to send back the Restrict into your deck and doing things like that. So you never know why they limited or banned certain things. But it looks like Maul's just going to set 2, pass back to a Ratos here, figuring that there probably isn't a Heavy Storm coming down. I think that's a good read. Ratos probably just has like monsters in hand that they can't bring out, like either Monarchs or Sidres or things like that. So yeah, it's looking pretty good for Model here, honestly. Because Ratos is a little bit on the defensive, but they did get to have their first Comfy. So, you know, maybe they sort of structured that Comfy in a way that can get them back into this game over the course of it. So we'll have to see exactly what they do. They're going to go for pre-mat on the Thestalos. That's pretty good. Does Model 0 have a response to that is the question. That's going to be fine by Model. So that Thestalos coming back here, potentially hitting in for 2,400, dropping Model out of Stein range. But, you know, Warriors doesn't really play Stein that much. You know, we talked earlier about how Stein can sort of be slotted into any deck, but Warriors doesn't really feel the need to play it. Last Will's kind of a brick. Warrior wants to win those top deck wars, so they don't really play around with Last Will as much as other decks do. Sidra coming out here. Is there a Monarch in hand to tribute over that Sidra with? Oh, there's a Warrior Lady. Okay, Warrior Lady is pretty good here if that connects. Hitting in to the Thestalos. A lot of these Monarch decks do not play things like Sacrets of Armor or things like that because it conflicts with the Treeborn Frog and stuff like that. But, you know, maybe they sided that in after seeing the Warrior deck do its thing. but I don't know. CS's Chaos Return format is probably where Soul Control is at its prime or nearing it. And speaking of, do you think Enemy of Justice could make an instant impact on some lists? Oh, I 100% think so. I'm really excited for Enemy of Justice. I think that is going to be really fun. I really like just like, I don't know, I just really like the set. I think it's a really, really neat set because you get things like the banish stuff, you get counter fairies, you get so much cool stuff from Enemy of Justice, and I'm really looking forward to experimenting with that a bit. Red Eyes says, missed the locals today, Sag, can't wait to see what people are cooking. Oh, people are cooking some stuff. We saw a game between Elemental Heroes and Insects, which was really, really cool to see. Unfortunately, those two base decks faced each other in round 1, but there are other people cooking some things. Restrict coming down now, blocking things like a Mobius coming down, popping them both back row. So that's pretty good there. Rage is probably a bit sad that they couldn't do their MST play on that. But, you know, that's how it goes sometimes. Yeah, bit of a tough spot for Mal to be in. This might be the end of the game, honestly. Book on the Thestalos is going to buy some time. But, you know, it's not looking good for them. They need a warrior off the top here to hit into Thestalos. And they also need a Ratos to have no back row to deal with that too. Dylan asks, will you do a Dark World deck? I remember on a Who Needs Meta video, they added card safe return and it was pretty strong. I will indeed be doing a Dark World deck. It should be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. And I might do something like, remember the hero video I did in Cyber Format where I sort of built the deck just from the ground up? I might do that for Dark World as well, because I think that Dark World is a really cool deck, and there are a lot of different ways that you can build it. So as I decide which way I want to build it, I'll probably sort of tinker around with that in a video. But so yeah, what card from the next set do I think could make a big impact? I think Dim Fizz and Macrocosmos, those are definitely going to be really big ones. You know, banishing things is going to be important. I think that I will definitely be playing around with a Bountiful Artifice deck. You know, Counter Fairies, I love that deck, and I think it'll be really cool to see what it looks like at its first incarnation. Let me look up the set for Enemy of Justice. Oh, Dust Tornado on that Restrict is going to be pretty good here. Drawing for a Mobius here. This might just be the end of the game. And yeah, that's just the end of the game there. Yeah, so it looks like a Ratos will take that one. Eating through the Restrict there. And very, very good stuff there. So Ratos moving on to the next round. Ratos, another locals player who really does win a lot of these events. So very, very cool stuff. Let's see. It looks like no other people have reported their matches, so should be good. But yeah, I will indeed be doing that for Dark World. I think it should be a lot of fun. But yeah, oof. I mean, that sometimes happens, Model. You know, I think you did the best you could, and you did survive quite some time, so that was pretty good too. Machine Aggro, yes, Cyber Phoenix is also really cool. I will be featuring a deck featuring that as well. Yeah, it's tough to remember sometimes when different decks in the DM era do come out, but that will definitely be one that I want to dive into. I'm going to pull up an Enemy of Justice card list here just on the side just to sort of see what's in it exactly real quick. Oh, the Destiny Heroes as well. I think Diamond Dude will definitely see some play. Diamond Dude Turbo is a popular deck in a variety of formats, and I think it'll be cool to see where it starts off. Dreadmaster, probably, I might feature that in a video, just going for that sort of win con. It seems kind of cope, but I might do it. I don't think the Heralds will do much on the first time they're around, but it could definitely be something I test out in a fairy build. Banish for the Radiance, that's going to be a big one, I think. You can go for a Battery Man deck. I might not do that, but, you know, it is something you can do. There are other hero cards that I will be playing around with as well. Oh, there's some interesting stuff like, I believe Miraculous Descent. Yeah, Miraculous Descent and, you know, Celestial Transformation and some other fairy cards that could potentially see play. Oh, Victory Viper XX03 would also be kind of cool as well. So there are some cool things from Enemy of Justice that I've got my eye on, and I'm really excited for that set. I think it's a really, really cool set. Oh, is that when eCall comes out? Oh, that's really cool. Yeah. Yeah, so Heroes will definitely get a bit of an upgrade in Enemy of Justice, so that would be cool. Icarus Attack is also really interesting. I might do a Wing Beast deck for that format. But, like, I don't know. It's like, for Icarus Attack to be really good, it does need good Wing Beasts, I think. Because, you know, otherwise it's a 2-for-2. And there are other 2-for-2s that are probably a little bit better. So, I don't know. I probably want to play around with Harpies until Harpy Queen comes out in, I think, Force of the Breaker is when that comes out. But that should be a fun thing to experiment with in Perfect Circle. Oh, Life Equalizer is definitely going to be something that you can do stuff with. I generally do like one sort of degenerate strategy video per format. And I'm really excited for Enemy of Justice because there will be quite a bit in that. And by different strategy, I don't just mean like stall burn or things like that. I mean like FTK stuff. So I will be doing like an Exchange of the Spirit FTK thing for Reaper format. That should be a lot of fun. Actually, when I first got into Reaper format, it was not playing things like Wind or, Miyabi or things like that. It was playing a deck trying to turbo into Exchange. I was really going hard on trying to break Exchange FTK. And I mean, I don't know. Am I proud of that? I mean, maybe not. But either way, I'll be able to use that experience to show it off. I mean, I don't really feel like showing off last turn for Reaper because I don't really think I gained that much. Sure, the list was kind of nice, but like, yeah, I don't think that last turn really gained much in this format, right? People have cooked with it in the past. People have done some things with it. But like, I don't think it's ever really converted to a super high place in tournaments either. So like, I don't think there's really much reason to cover it. In general, for these formats, I don't really... I mean, yeah, it gets banned next turn or next format, but like, I don't really think that's necessarily a reason to cover a deck just because it gets banned in the next format. Like, generally, I like to cover decks that are either they gain something in this format that makes them better than they were in the past, or they're better situated in the meta than they were in the past. So, like, last turn doesn't really satisfy either of those, and so I probably won't play it, Like, there are plenty of cards that get banned over time. Like, for instance, Butterfly Dagger Elma, that's a card that got banned in GOAT format. And I did feature it in some FTK videos, but that was more because of the FTKs and less because Elma got banned, So, yeah. Last turn Dark World is kind of interesting, but, like, the awkward thing about that is, like, you can't bring out your Dark Worlds once Jowgen's on field. So even if you do randomly discard a Dark World off Jowgen, you can't summon it out. You can only really do that with Brow. You'd get the draws, which is kind of nice, but, like, can't really do much besides that. So I'd be curious to see the list because I'm very interested in what you actually cooked up with that. But, like, the awkward thing as well is if you just have the last turn on a Dark World monster, then, most Monarchs can get over that. So, like, your opponent can just bring out a Monarch, hit over your Dark World, and then that's awkward as well. So, yeah. I'm not sure what exactly the game plan is there, but I definitely think it would be pretty interesting to see. Magical Arm Shield, the anime GOAT. That's very, very cool. I'm excited to play around with that. And, well, actually, I probably won't play around with it, but I will be featuring it in the video going over the card pool for Chaos Return when I get to that format. I always like to sort of do these card pool videos going through just an exhaustive summary of all the new cards that actually do things added to the format. They don't generally do the best on YouTube, but they are really fun for me to make, and I like making them. They are very long. They do take a lot of time to sort of edit down and stuff like that. But, Hoy is just like, GG. I don't know what happened here. Did it just glitch on my screen? It might have just glitched for me. Because I just saw them, like, not do anything for a while. So I think it just glitched. Very strange glitch. I've never encountered that before. But it looks like Kesha did win that one. So Kesha moving on to the next round. Okay, it was a bug on my part. I just thought y'all were like spending a lot of time thinking, So yeah, nothing to see there, honestly. Okay, so this time it's like a glitch imitating life. It's like art imitating life. This is a glitch imitating life. I believe we still have Gerbil versus PJ. So let's dive into that one. Looks like it's 1-1 here. We don't know what PJ is playing because we haven't seen them yet, but we do know Gerbil's on an insect deck. So I'm really excited to see what they're playing around with there. Non-aggression area. Okay, that also works, but it is kind of a little bit awkward. But, yeah, it is something that you can play with it. I generally like Jowgen better than those decks than non-aggression area. But, I mean, that's just a personal preference on my part. And you can definitely do things with non-aggression area for sure. But, yeah, I mean, it's awkward siding in all these things. That can come back to bite you. And siding is very, very important in Reaper format. I do believe, I think siding can make or break winning or losing a game, especially if you're up against a Stein OTK deck. Having the right things in the side can be very, very good. It is a skill that does take some time to master. I don't think I've mastered it by any means because side decking is probably the part of the game that I'm worst at. It's one that I'm trying to improve at, but it definitely is a very, very difficult thing for me to do. So I really do need to try and improve on that, but it is very, very important in this format for sure. Looks like PJ is going to bring out a Reaper off of a tomato hit there. Not a bad play because, creature swap though. That's going to be pretty interesting. Doing this in main 2. So I guess they figured because PJ didn't bring out a Sangan, they don't have a Monarch in hand. So that makes sense. Or potentially PJ isn't playing Monarchs and stuff. But yeah. Oh, rip. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, that does hurt, Hoy. Yeah. Yeah, that'll do it there. I mean, I think it went to game 3, right? So, yeah, you still won, or did you win that one? I don't know. I don't have the game in front of me, but bricking also does hurt. DD Worley will be able to hit over that Reaper, so that will allow PJ to get in for damage here. But on the following turn, Gerbil has a potential good crackback here with that flying Kamakiri, so that's a bit awkward there. Oh, 2 out, yeah. So, I mean, that does happen there. The Herald cards are interesting, so I might play around with them. But the thing is, like, if you're playing counter fairies, you want to be using counter traps and not just the fairy monster from hand. It's cool to have those hand traps. But like maybe if like Stein OTK is still like wreaking havoc on the meta, then you want to have those, or maybe like you want to have Herald of Purple Light if you're going against like a Chaos Return deck. But I do think that in general, it's not really worth it to play the Heralds. But what do I know? It could definitely turn out differently there. But yeah, respect the troops, as Steven Yurosevic said. We got to respect those Kamakiris going in there, bringing out things from the deck. Also, with that reinforcing the army, got to respect that as well. But yeah, Bountiful Artemis is one of my favorite cards in this format. What happened here? Am I glitched again? Am I glitched again? You can't bring out level 3 off. Let me dive back into that game. I think I might have been glitched again because you can't bring out. No, huh? I'm very confused here. You can't bring out a level 3 off a rat because it's not Earth, it's wind. So this might have just been or if that's not a rat, it could be a Kamakiri there. Am I just glitched? Let me know, chat, if I'm glitched here. So it looks like PJ's on a bit of a return deck, playing the return to get a bit more defensive here. I do like going in draw phase, so that way you can decide whether you want to go into your level 5s. It looks like they are going to go into at least one level 5 here for sure. If they've got a last will on top of this to go into Stein, that is probably the end of the game because you attack into the Reaper with the Cyber End Dragon, and that should do it. And now this level insect, or level 5 is, it does gain its effect, so that Warrior Lady will be at 1,000 attack, the Reaper's at 0 attack. Not that it really matters here. But it can be good against certain Monarchs that might come down, and against Chaos Orc as well, although Chaos Orc probably just banishes it. Yeah, I think I'm probably glitched here. Yeah, I feel like I'm probably glitched. That probably is not level 3, or this was like, I don't know what's going on here. But yeah, I agree that it does not make sense in counter fairies. In a Venus deck, it could maybe make sense, but there you're still in an awkward spot because like you want the shine balls on field to take advantage of Venus. And if you have the shine balls on field and you're pulling off your Venus combo, the Heralds are basically really bad for you. So I'm not really sure if they're worth playing there. I can't see the theory behind playing the Heralds in like a devoted deck. Like, I'm not sure what they would be doing there, but it is something that could potentially come up. Roar comes out here, stopping the tomato. And I mean, I don't know. That must be a level 3, but then that must mean that this is like a Kamakiri that got glitched. Like, I don't know. Or there was just a misplay there on the parts of the players involved. I mean, it's accepted game state at this point. I think the game has changed too much by now to really go back and rewind there. But like, yeah, I don't know. My DB apparently is bugging out today. Speaking of the bugs, But yeah, if anyone else is watching the game on Dueling Look, let me know if this is indeed the correct game state or if it's something else. But yeah, I do think I'll be experimenting a lot with the different enemy objective stuff. Let's see, what else does Chaos Return add? Does it add the next set as well? It looks like they're going to go into a Ultimate Insect level 5 there. So that's going to drop the tomato down yet again to 400. So this is 1,900 life points. So you can't really bring out anything else off this tomato, or else you just lose the game. So it looks like PJ is not going to use the effect, which I do think makes sense. Now, even if a board comes down from hand and you tribute over the Reaper, one of these insects is still, decreasing you by 500. So yeah, Mildly Swift Gerbil says, Drat! Foiled again. The gadgets, I believe, come out in the Machine Strike structure deck. So the Machina structure deck, I believe, or no, not the Machina structure deck, but there is like the Ancient Gear structure deck, the one with Gaddletron. So that's structure deck 10, I believe. So let me actually check which format that comes out in. Let's see here. I'm gonna go to format library. And Chimera Tech format, Hoy says. Okay, so yeah, Chimera Tech should be a lot of fun. I'm really excited to see how that goes. Looks like they're going to bring out a Strike Ninja here. You do what you have to. Strike Ninja can quick effect banish yourself. Very, very cool deck, the Strike Ninja deck here. You know, you basically banish darks, bring them back to their turn, and do cool stuff with that. Kind of like Warrior mixed with Return. This deck was really popular back when Reaper was played a bit more. I definitely will be showing it off on the channel because I think it is really, really cool. And a lot of different ways you can build this deck as well. I believe Survivor is also a dark, but it's kind of awkward because you have to do that on field. So that's not really the best card in this deck, but I do think there are things like Scout Plane you could potentially experiment with. So yeah, Ninja is just a cool card all around though, I think. Looks like Gerbil's going to think about attacking in. I think you do just attack in here, right? Because if you don't attack in, they can just quick effect banish in the end phase. So it doesn't really matter one way or another, whether you attack in now or at the end of the turn. At least this forces it out. So yeah, I think you just attack. Yeah, and they're going to attack here. Yeah, how far? Next week, we'll be having a Reapers Locals that's going to be at a time that's a bit friendlier for EU folks. So that should probably be on Saturday, like, you know, sometime in the afternoon or around noon EST. So that should be a good time for in the EU. But yeah, it is sometimes awkward. Like I try and generally have these locals at a variety of times. And when I do have a big tournament and stuff, I want to make sure that there is a time for EU players to play as well as a time for, you know, just the Americans to play as well. So hopefully you will be able to attend that one if you want to. And if you don't want to, at least you can at least watch at a more reasonable time. But yeah, it is kind of awkward for a lot of the EU folks. So I do try and make it a little bit better there. But okay, it looks like only one was summoned by the effect. So that actually means wasn't there was an error then because the tomato should have been at 500 higher. And that means that the other card couldn't have been a level 3 or else you would have just used the effect because it's from hand or deck. So yeah, I do not know what's going on here. Very strange with the DB there. But yeah, MBT, I will be probably showing off a lot of the decks that he also sort of went for in advertising the format. So like Dead Rat will show off, Strike Ninja will show off. I got a lot of planned decks to cover here. A lot of the classic decks that people were playing around with Reaper format, but also potentially some others as well. So look forward to those. It should be a lot of fun. But it looks like NXL Force coming down here, and then a TT comes down as well. That is going to be pretty rough here, wiping the entire board. Now, PJ is still at, well, they should be at 700, but, you know, either way, they're still at a very, very low life total. And, you know, that can be a bit risky, but they do have this Cannon Soldier here, and they've got potentially Return Online going for their stuff. Okay, it looks like no Return Online yet, but, you know, that return is lurking there. And if return's set up, you know, that can just be the end of the game. It looks like a level 3 is coming down here, probably just crashing in to the Cannon Soldier because you got to do that sometimes, you know. If it hits into the Cannon Soldier, then you can potentially do a Last Will if you've got that. At least you're removing this from play. So, not removing it from play, you're not banishing it, but you are getting rid of it so that way, you know, if they do go for a return play, well, actually, it's still lethal for a return play there. So, yeah, a bit tricky here. Yeah, I'm not sure how you navigate if they do have return. I think either way, yeah, you just crash, deprive them of a card. But this is definitely pretty awkward. Oh, and the damage stuff, they got Limiter. Okay. That's pretty interesting. Going for Limiter there. Limiter is limited in this format. So, not necessarily the most likely option in the back row there, but still very, very good play there. They will lose the cannon, but they did deal 14. And if they do have a return, which I don't think they do, because they would have gone for a return last turn if they had it. But either way, they're still in a pretty good spot. They've got Gerbil down to a pretty low life total, even though they are also at a pretty low life total. Knock on the set's going to be pretty good here, banishing a Dark Hexfield Fusion. So, seems like they're on a bit spicy tech here. And looks like that Kamakiri will indeed be the end of the game. I think PJ's playing a really, really interesting build. Playing a lot of different pieces together, but it looked really, really cool there. They did manage to win one game in that match there. So, you know, that does show that the deck does have some legs potentially, but very, very cool to see that sort of experimentation there. And very, very neat. But yeah, Gerbil's going to be facing against Ratos. And then we've also got to get the game between Emeska and Chef Steph Curry. So let's see if we can get that game going. Okay, there we go. Chef Steph Curry versus LL. Looks like LL is on a Rescue Cat build. Rescue Cat OTK, another really good deck in the Format Club. We get to see that here. And it looks like they actually managed to win game 1. So we're in game 2. It seems like the Mobius probably was used to pop a level limit last turn. And now, honestly, they might be setting up OTK this turn because they went for Will plus Cat, I believe. And they've got Radiant, they've got Wombat, they've got Panda. I think if you go for 2 more Radiants, that is lethal. If you go for 2 more Radiants, do they have a Radiant? No Radiant Engrave, Wrap banished. So if you go for another cat here, go for Radiant. I believe that is enough. But yeah, I'm really happy with how the Wind deck did. Now, I was not the progenitor of that deck. Skyson was actually the one who realized the power of Miyabi back in the day. And I sort of took it and was like, well, what if we use Miyabi and just turn it into a Last Will Turbo deck? So we're playing, the Ultimate Insect level 3 and 5. We're playing, Kamakiri. We're playing Miyabi. We're playing Hand of Nephthys, because that is a wind. And also Nephthys itself. Another Last Will play that you can do. So very cool stuff here. It looks like LL is going for the Stein as opposed to just going for more Beast Soft Rescue Cat. I think that's also fine here. That way your whole board doesn't get wiped potentially next turn. But I do kind of like the cat here going for Radiant. But Cyber Twin also works. This is 800 plus 56. And this probably played around Karibo a little bit more. So 800 over the Mobius there off the Panda. 56 total from the Twin. If they've got one Karibo, it's just 28 off the Twin. And then 21, so 49, 57, 64. So I believe that's lethal if they've only got one Karibo. If they've got 2 Karibos, it's not lethal. But it looks like it is indeed lethal there. So, yeah, GG's here. I mean, Cat OTK, very powerful deck as well, just like Stein OTK is. So, I'm going to put that one in as well. And it looks like we've got a game between Cat OTK and whatever catches on. I mean, catches probably on a bit more of a Chaos build, it seems like. They were playing the Sorks. Maybe sort of like a Goat Control build updated for this format. But very, very cool stuff. But yeah, even though Karibo is less helpful versus Stein in this format, History of Wario 1, I do think that it's something you could potentially see people playing. So it is good to still play around it as much as you can, I think. And it looks like they did play around that there. So we got the game between Gerbil and Aratos. And it looks like Aratos won a quick game 1. So they probably did, just OTK game 1, right? Because we do know the Aratos is on Stein Monarch. So that deck can just win out of nowhere game 1. We'll have to see what they do game 2 and 3 if it does get to that point. Which says next format is Icarus Attack, so I hope to see more Miyabi next format. Honestly, with Miyabi, it's kind of like better than Icarus Attack in a lot of ways, in my opinion. Just because the things that you can contribute off Miyabi are more flexible in that format. And also, you're still potentially doing a 2-for-2 most of the time, because you generally want to use Miyabi when your opponent's using a card to either out the Miyabi or out your Wind Monster. And so you just go for that, shovel that back into the deck, and it's not engraved, so you don't have to worry about them using like Graveyard Recursion or things like that, or setting up for Chaos plays. And it's just really, really good. You also don't have to worry about your opponent having, more than one card on field or not to activate it. So, yeah, I think Icarus just isn't quite there yet, in my opinion, in Chaos Return. But, we'll see what we can do with it. See what decks we can cook up. Not sure if I'll be cooking up much with Icarus Attack, but it is something that I'll be thinking about for sure. So, Coffee in the opener is going to be really good here for Gerbil. And it looks like they've got Tomato, Treeborn, Premat, Warrior Lady. And Reddit asked, Treeborn? Are you going to send the Treeborn? I mean, Treeborn's pretty threatening, you might want to get that engraved. But it looks like they're going to send these to Warrior, which I do think is probably the right choice. There's also an argument potentially for Warrior Lady. The Premat complicates things. There's also an argument for Premat, to be sure. But you probably don't want the Zabord to get the pop. You're probably more scared of that. If you do a spell and trap removal, you can use that on the Premat. Just summoning out a Howling Insect, playing around at the knock here. I think that makes sense. But, you probably could set it, because they don't knock in hand, it's a one-off, so what are the odds that they draw into a knock here? But I think it's also fine to spring into attack. There also could be like Rush Recklessly in the back row. We don't know their whole deck, so yeah, a bit of a tricky situation for Aratos here. Looks like they're just going to set 1 and pass, so probably the Treeborn, I would assume, but Aratos probably knows that Gerbil would assume that as well, so it could definitely be something else too. So looks like Gerbil's going to bring out that level 3 Ultimate Insect there and get in over that set, attacking with the Howling Insect first. I think that makes sense. And take Warrior Lady. So Warrior Lady is going to banish the Howling Insect there. Again, as I mentioned, Aratos knew that Gerbil knew that the set could be Treeborn. So it does make sense that they would potentially set the Warrior Lady. And it looks like that level 3 attack is going to go through. But the issue is now, with the Warrior Lady gone, how are you clearing the level 3? I think you probably have to use the Tomato. Yeah, Tomato into the level 3. You could also have done Premat on the Zaborg, but yeah, Tomato's going to be really good here, attacking into the level 3, getting out a Reaper now. probably ripping apart the hand. You could also just go for a Stein, although I think Stein's a little bit greedy because your opponent might have a way to deal with it. So yeah, getting in with Reaper here, the namesake of the format. And I do think this is a pretty good card to know about in the meta. You know, maybe not as dominant as you might expect from it being the namesake, but it's still a cool card in this format. It does see a lot of play as well. MST on the set, you know, they're probably saving the MST for the pre-mat there, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and you got to hit that back row if you need to make sure that the next play you've got is going through. So it looks like they're just going to set one, pass back to Ratos here. Not the best situation to be in, facing down an open Spirit Reaper here. But not the worst either if you do have a way to deal with that Reaper. Looks like the Reaper is going to hit in, and it looks like it's going to be met with a Saku there. So Saku popping the Reaper here. And now Ratos has got to decide what to do, what to commit to the board. Probably going to set the Treeborn this turn, I would assume, unless it's one of the other cards that they drew since Gerbil saw a peek at their hand. Gerbil's going to bring out this Howling Insect, tack into the set monster, hit the Treeborn Frog indeed. And now main 2 just pass back to Ratos. Seems like no more back row there. So yeah, Treeborn coming back, unfortunately, for Gerbil. And if Ratos has a Monarch here to tribute out, then that could be pretty good for them. Zaborg plus Will is probably the end of the game here as well, so good to keep in mind there. Brinkon on the Howling Insect does not bode well, but, you know, they're probably just tributing off for a Monarch, tributing for Thestalos. Thestalos is going to be really good here, ripping a card out of their hand, dropping Gerbil down to 1 card in hand up against Treeborn plus the Thestalos. Oh, and hitting a Rat too. You probably want to keep the Rat around because Rat is really good in this situation. But yeah, it looks like... Okay, looks like they're... Okay, yeah, they accidentally took too much from the Thessalos discard, so they're taking the correct amount and then taking 2,400 on top of that. There's an argument here for pre-matting back the Zaborg and just getting in for additional damage, but they probably don't want to play into Dark Hole too much because Dark Hole is still around in this format, and it's definitely a major threat that you have to worry about. So the question is, what is that set? How's Ratos getting around it? Could be another Recruiter because this deck is playing a lot of Recruiters. So the Tomatoes coming down, and that is a potential way to get around that Recruiter. Hitting into a level 3. Oof. Yeah, that hurts. Getting in for an additional 14. And things are not looking good for Gerbil here. Potential game shot next turn. You can probably feel safe bringing back pre-mat if they don't set a back row here. And yeah, it is not looking good. Okay, they do set a back row, so you know, you might not want to go for the pre-mat now in cases like T-Row or something like that. But yeah, it's still a very, very tough position for Gerbil to claw their way back from, so it's unlikely that they will be able to do so. Another level 3. Yeah, that's the flaw of playing this sort of deck, that sometimes you just break on all the level 3s that you can't recruit. And that is sort of like a win con against this deck. If you deprive them of ways to, you know, get out the level 3s that you don't want to draw, and they draw those level 3s, then they're in for a bad time. So it looks like Ratos will be moving on to the finals of this locals, and they might be poised to win it all, but Imeska or Kesha could definitely win as well. So let's dive in to LL versus Kesha, and it looks like still game 1. Okay, so Kesha has used up a Raigeki Break pitching a Demonic there. They've also got a Sidra out, and it looks like LL has used up a Momonga, so those sets are probably Momonga. Could be something else if the Momonga was braked, but the fact that they're at 9,000 to me indicates that those sets are Momonga there. So, kind of curious. The Rat was probably Raigeki broken, maybe. I'm curious whether the March was used up and how. Maybe the March was Raigeki broken, but then how did the... Okay, I think what happened was the March was Raigeki broken, and then the Rat was just hit over by the Sidra. So now they're bringing out a Panda here. Panda will be at 1,300. If Kesha commits another card to board, it will be at 1,800, also potentially able to attack over whatever they bring out. So... tricky spot for Kesha to be in here for sure. March would have gone pretty hard here with the double Momongas there as well. Because if you don't know, Big March of the Animals, very, very cool card. It's a quick play spell that says all face-up beast monsters you control gain 200 attack for each beast monster you control until the end of this turn. So if you have a bunch of beasts out, you can use Big March to potentially buff them up even further. Ojama Trio coming down here. That's going to be really good for this Panda here. And Kesha's got to think about exactly what to do against this sort of thing. Really rough spot to be in here for sure. And it looks like the tokens will come down. Getting the accurate tokens here. Green, yellow, and black there. So yeah, that Panda is going to buff up to a whopping total of 2,800, I believe. So yeah, brutal stuff. Also, whenever those tokens are destroyed, you know, Kesha will take 300. Doesn't really matter as much. But there are some things that you can do here. LL, I think, should probably attack into the Sidra. That would be my guess as to what they're going to do. I mean, if you hit into one of the tokens, you deal 18 or 21 total, I guess. And the Panda is still above the Sidra there. So there are arguments for not attacking into the Sidra, especially because there is a Dark Engrave, and you might want to get a Light and a Dark Engrave for Kesha here. But yeah, definitely a couple different options for them to do here. They're going to go into battle, and they're going to hit over the Sidra indeed. I think that is probably the best choice overall. But, yeah, I think that Ojama Trio, yeah, I think it's just a matter of forgetting to send it there. DB sometimes weird, you know, just forgetting to send things. But realistically, it doesn't matter that much. But yeah, it does potentially deny them a tribute summon as well. So that is something to consider. Do you deny them a chaos monster or tribute summon? And I think you are correct that denying them the tribute summon is probably for the best. Although we don't know exactly what catches on. I'm not sure if LL has been seeing too many of their games or not. But yeah, I think honestly from this position, if you got the L Lab, I think you could potentially attack into one of the tokens instead. But either way here, I think you're pretty fine. You know, doing this dodge around Mobius, but like if they summon Mobius, they have to put in defense mode and then pop your stuff. But I guess if they summon Mobius, they get a Light and Dark Engrave anyways, so you're feeling fine about that. So looks like they're going to set one. Oh, or not set one. They're going to summon one. They're going to summon Treeborn Frog, go for TT here. That's honestly a pretty good move, not going to lie. It does wipe away your entire board, but you know, your board's just buffing up that Panda. A Secret Barrel chained to that, so that's going to be really good. So Secret Barrel is going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times 2, so 1,600 damage. And then Kedge is going to take 900 damage on top of that. So this does get them out of Stein range. So that is very, very good to hit. Yeah, not a bad turn at all for LL here. And LL is going to draw for turn. They got probably plenty of monsters they can bring out here to just get the offensive pressure going. And TT is going to be gone, so they don't have to worry about TT here. So Cat is honestly a pretty good top deck if they do have it. Avarice is also a really good top deck. Wow. They've got exactly 5 monsters in grave. People aren't really playing Disappear in this format, and there's no DD Crow, so you don't have to worry about that. So yeah, I'll shuffle everything back into graveyard here, or into deck here, and then draw LL 2 more cards. Avarice, one of the most powerful cards in this format if you've got a deck that can support it. So very, very cool stuff there. They're drawing 2 more. And one of the most powerful things about Rescue Cat is that it can either OTK you or play a long grind game using things like L-Lab to just slow the game down to a crawl. So very, very cool stuff here. MST coming for the L-Lab, so that means that the Treeborn Frog will be able to come back in the standby phase here. And also doing that so that way if the set was something that gave the MST, you don't have to worry about that. But yeah, overall pretty good position for Kesha to be in here. But yeah, Avarice is just so difficult to play in this format. There aren't really many decks that do support it well, but if you can play it, it is really, really cool. And very, very good too. You know, it's basically a +1. It's like Pot of Greed, but you're also getting combo pieces back in the deck in the case of a deck like this. So very, very good stuff overall. But yeah, we got to see what LL does here. Now, that Frog on field could potentially be a bad thing for Kesha, because if LL does bring out a Rescue Cat, bring out a, you know, Panda and do full Rescue Cat combo plays and hit over to that Frog, that can be a bit awkward. Ojama Trio coming down yet again. So this is going to provide Kesha with 3 tokens there, lock up the entire board. Now, of course, Kesha could tribute summon, and we do know how good Monarchs are in this format. So, you know, that is something that LL might have to worry about in the future. But I do think it is good just preemptively going for it now. Oh, and Panda is so good here. Panda into Frog is busted because, you know, they don't realistically want to bring back the Frog, or else the Panda gets buffed. I mean, they could also just, you know, bring it back if they got a Monarch, so that's something. But, like, either way, if they do that, they're, like, zones are locked here, and you're getting in for 3,200. So I do think that Panda into the Frog is the best move here. They might have potentially other plans, though, so that is something to keep in mind. But I do think that Panda and Frog is really good. Red Solari says Monster Mash is potentially the best way to use Avarice. Yeah, I would agree with that, but I also think Monster Mash isn't really the best sort of deck. Like, Monster Mash would be a deck playing a bunch of monsters, plus, like, Avarice, maybe a Dark Hole here or there, like, maybe just some powerful spells as well. But, you know, you're basically playing all monsters, potentially Magical Merchants to get into the spells, get a bunch of monsters in grave. But, like, the thing is that there aren't too many payoffs for that deck in this format. And if you think about, like, the deck in a format like Edison, right, where there are a lot more payoffs for it, and it still doesn't really see much play. It still isn't that good there. I don't really think it's that good here either, but it's definitely a cool card that you can play. And it's definitely something that people will probably experiment with. It's a fan favorite deck for a reason, because it's just so fun. And Avarice does let it draw too. But like, you gotta also consider, like, is that advantage going to be usable, or is it going to be empty advantage? One of the issues with Monster Mash is that you're really limited by your 1 normal summon per turn rule. So, you know, one of the ways that, you know, later Monster Mash decks can get around that is by using things like Gallus the Star Beast to get special summons on field extenders, things like that. But realistically, if you're playing the Monster Mash deck in this format, you do have Treeborn Frog, sure, but that doesn't really get around the 1 normal summon rule that you're still having to play by, right? And so I don't think that, even with the Avarices, I don't think that the deck is that good here. But Cold Wave is also good, sure, but like, still, you've got the awkward spot of like, you know, what are you doing with your Monster Mash, right? Are you just playing it to do things like Avarice? Are you playing it to turn your Cold Wave online? Because I would argue that Monarchs can also turn their Cold Wave online very easily, and Cold Wave is very good in Monarchs too. So like, you know, I don't really think that is the best deck in this format. I don't really see the clear reason why you would play it over other decks in the format, but it's still cool to see. So Swords is going to buy some time here, by the way. Swords, very, very good. Draw from Kesha. You know, it does prevent the Treeborn Frog from coming back, but you don't really care about that at this point. You just want to survive while that Panda is threatening lethal if the Swords drops. So, very cool stuff. Yeah, and exactly, Hoy. It gets better when we get more monsters that can play themselves. Things like, you know, Gallus the Star Beast and other things like that that can actually be extenders and pair with the Monster Mash, like, parts of the deck a lot better. So, it's always cool to see what can be sort of, like, brought back into these formats from later formats. So, it definitely is cool to think about it in that way. But I do think in general, the deck just doesn't really do enough. But yeah, the tricky Machina Fortress, there's a lot of very cool stuff that you can do with it. Oh, hitting into a manga, probably not what Kesha wanted to see here, but I do think that it does make sense to just get aggressive here. But yeah, Momanga just gets so many more monsters out of deck, and, you know, fuels your big march if you want to go for something like that. So yeah, it's pretty rough. I mean, so the thing is, like, you know, saying it's fine as is, like, what do you mean by fine, right? Like, of course the deck can probably win a game, you know, here and there, but I argue, like, if you're thinking about it in the meta, I think it would probably be like Rogue. And if you're playing a Rogue deck, like, that doesn't really have a reason to play it over playing other things that can play the other stuff better, then I don't really feel the need to, like, play it. That's me personally. I've never really felt the need to play decks like that, where they're, like, not as good as other decks that are doing a similar thing. So that's why I generally don't cover things like that on the channel. Like, if I spent the time covering, like, every single deck that you could play in a format, even if there are just strictly superior versions of them in that format, then it would take way too long to get through anything. So that's sort of my reason why I don't generally do that sort of thing. But, like, it would definitely be cool to see someone build a competent Monster Mash deck that is doing something very unique there. So yeah, 60-card Recruiter would also be very interesting. Again, Recruiters are very powerful as well. If you go Grizzly into Treeborn, that's pretty good. You know, we've seen the power of things like, you know, Flying Kamakiri, bringing out level 3 and things like that. You can also potentially do Recruiters for, like, a Spiritual Art deck, things like that. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of like one of those things where, like, I don't see a path to making the deck, like, viable in a way that, you know, is not done better by other decks. But if someone else does see that path and they do make the deck, then, you know, it's definitely something that I could feature if people do the work to make it work. But, yeah, Hoy says people tend to go for format-focused channels for that level of format coverage. And that's sort of my philosophy as well, right? Like, if someone does happen to like Reaper format after I cover it enough to make decks on it and, like, you know, really invigorate the format with that, then I do think that, like, that is a position for them to do, right? And I think that, like, for me personally, I've always sort of said, like, I am focused on covering formats that people have not covered. I'm focused on, like, covering as many as I can. I'm sort of going for breadth, not depth sort of thing. So I would love it if other channels sort of sprung up and sort of covered the formats that I've covered and, you know, in a lot more depth and showed everything that you could possibly play. Like Hoy mentions, there are channels doing that for Edison. It'd be really cool to see that for some of the lesser known formats that I've covered as well. But I don't think that I'm the person to do that. But yeah, it looks like going into a Panda and potentially some other stuff, that will be the end of the game there. So as I said, you know, the Rescue Cat deck can grind out as well as just, you know, go for a big OTK push. So very, very cool stuff from LL there, taking a game from Kesha. So very, very good stuff. And yeah, it's also why, like, when I covered GOAT, I'm really only doing GOAT through collabs. So, like, a lot of people were unhappy with, you know, me not really staying GOAT for a long period of time. But if you want to watch GOAT, you've got GOAT Format, the YouTube channel there run by JDT. You've got Pui. You've got tons of other GOAT Format YouTubers who are covering GOAT Format in a lot more depth than I ever could, right? So I think it's better for me to just collab with those YouTubers, potentially spread the word about them if for some reason you're watching my channel and you don't know about them. And, sort of get their thoughts on the format as well. So that's sort of how I view GOAT, and that will be the approach that I'm taking to Edison as well. Because there's just so many Edison YouTubers out there doing great work, by the way, like E3 Yu-Gi-Oh, Carpath, Zuxid. There's so many great Edison YouTubers really going through and doing a lot of stuff. Oh, Lowman Yu-Gi-Oh as well, who actually played in the Chaos Tournament a while back and co-commentated that with me. I'm looking forward to collabing with them again. There will be a lot of cool collabs in the Edison era, so look forward to that, but that's still a while away. I know that there was a Reaper channel a while ago. Oh, Thomas. I don't think I've heard of Thomas. Oh, Thomas Edison. That's what streaming does to you. Your brain on streaming, it can be very easy to not realize those jokes. But yeah, old Thomas Alva, definitely one of the better Edisons. Although if you're talking about personality-wise, Thomas was definitely not the best guy in the world. If you don't know the story about Edison, Edison was a very fascinating figure, but he was also a real jerk. He was doing things back in the day that really explain why a lot of modern business practices, why a lot of the laws are in place, because he was doing some awful, awful stuff to a lot of people. But, very influential figure, very interesting figure. So I definitely recommend reading some stuff on him. And yeah, then again, you look at modern day business practices, and not too much has gotten too much better, but things have gotten at least less outright bad, right? You aren't sending, hired goons to beat up competitors and stuff like that. So yeah. But yeah, I think that Edison's a very interesting figure for sure. But Dark Hole coming down here, wiping away the board, wiping away those Momongas. Someone got a Reaper getting in for a hit here, ripping a card out of hand. Very good against this sort of OTK style deck. But, again, the deck doesn't necessarily need to OTK. Of course, this is going to be a bit of a setback for LL for sure. But they could potentially recover. So we'll have to see if they actually manage to do so. But I'm trying to think, are there any other Yu-Gi-Oh formats named after actual people? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think, well, I guess Charleston, Charleston is named after King Charles, right? Because it's Charlestown basically, but they shortened the town to a ton. So that's technically named after it, kind of. Yeah, Edison is the name of Edison, New Jersey, so it is the name of a place as well. But it's the name of a place named after a person. So I'm wondering if there are other sort of formats like that. Was there anyone named Meadowlands? Was that someone's name? I don't quite know. But yeah, it looks like a Radiant's going to come down here. And that will be able to just hit over the Reaper, do a little bit of damage there. Going for pre-mat as well, probably on the Panda there. That's going to be pretty good. If the last card is Ojamatrio, that's going to be pretty insane. But it looks like a Raigeki Break's going to come down here. Pitch a Warrior Lady, pop the pre-mat. So it looks like that won't quite go through, but you still have attacking over the Reaper and getting in for 5. Tesla format when? That's what I'm saying. We got the DC Enjoyer. Where's the AC Enjoyer, right? I guess Pepe, yeah, you got Pepe Le Pew, you got Pepe the Frog, So, and, I'm sure there are people named Pepe out there, it's just Pepe Le Pew and Pepe the Frog are the ones that I know of. So, yeah, Pepe is definitely one. But I'm excited for Pepe. I know that a lot of people will, a lot of people are not looking forward to Pendulum summons. A lot of people aren't looking for Xyz or Synchro summons as well. But I sort of go into it with an open mind every format that I cover, and I really do like Tier 0 formats. So, I think I'm going to enjoy Pepe when I get to it. I think it'll be really cool. And also, Pepe was at a time when I wasn't really following the game too much. So, I do think that it'll be kind of interesting for me to get back into the game that way and sort of see what things were going on at the time. Level limit, really good draw here. Switching that Sork to defense. Now, Sork can still banish things, so that is something to keep in mind. But, it's very good just having defense here. You might wonder why I did catch a non-attack over the Radiant last turn when it could deal a bunch of damage. One, if the back row is like Saku or something, you don't want to lose to that. But also, they want to banish it so that way Avarice is offline. We did see Avarice in game 1 from LL. So, it is something that they're playing. And it's good to know about. Oh, Moth here, probably getting back MST. MST on the level limit, I assume. You could also potentially, yeah, it looks like they are going to go for the level limit. You could also potentially go for one on the back row instead, just switch the Reaper to attack, get him for 6, but I think you have to go for this. Oh, Jinzo. Oh, that's big. Okay. Getting him for 4,700. This is a 2-turn clock if it goes through. Yeah, that is brutal. Yeah, I mean, this is probably the end of the game this time. But, I mean, there are some things that LL can draw to get back into it. I mean, Dark Hole is a big one. If they draw Dark Hole off the top, that will do it. If they draw a Rat, that's going to be pretty good as well. Oh, another set there is probably not going to do it for them. I mean, Book is something that can protect them a little bit here. But, yeah, it's not looking too hot for LL here. And will they take 24, or do they have the Book of Moon? They're going to take that 24. Plus the 23, and that should be the end of the game. Yeah, so that's game 2. Going into game 3, it'll be very interesting to see how both players side against this sort of thing. Red Eye Solari says, Pepe may potentially be different now depending on how many hand drafts people play. Maxine Valor is probably common, but I wonder if Ogre is going to be with them. I would assume that Ogre probably gets played in Pepe. But, like, something I don't know. Can you chain Wavering Eyes to Ogre? Because if you can chain Wavering Eyes to Ogre and pop your own thing, I think that does allow your effects trigger through Ogre. So, and I know that Wavering Eyes does get played a lot in that format. So that could be something to consider there. Very, very interesting. I just think Tier 0 formats are fascinating because, like, you get into really nitty-gritty stuff of, like, okay, what are people actually adding to their deck to play around this mirror match that they know about? And I feel like it goes, especially with, like, retro exploration, it goes into a bit more depth than you have with a lot of, like, you know, when the formats actually happen, like, in the moment. Because when the formats actually happen in the moment, sure, people can know what the best tech is and potentially prepare for that a little bit. But, like, once you've actually gone through a ton of games with that, a ton of mirror matches and stuff, and really get a sense for, like, what the top decks are playing, I do think that it does open up some interesting sort of tech that you can add to the deck that you might have not considered. And I do think it will be very interesting to reach that. But we still got a couple more Tier 0 formats to go before we reach the Pepe. But it should be fun. Yeah, so it looks like you can chain Wavering Eyes to Ogre. That's such a powerful combo there. Wavering Eyes is just so fun. I think that card's really neat. But yeah. Gerbil says Tier 0 formats can be interesting for retro exploration, or if the format at the moment is brief, having a prolonged Tier 0 format gets old very quick to me. And yeah, honestly, that is one of the reasons why I say that Tier 0 formats are a lot better in a retro scene than in modern day, right? Like, if you are forced to play, like, Snake Eyes, if you want any chance at winning big events and stuff, and you're forced to play that for months and months and months, like, that's obviously not helpful for the game, because there's some people who just don't like the deck. There's some people who can't afford the deck, and, you know, they know that it's going to get hit eventually anyway, so they might not want to shell out the cash for it anyways. But if you're looking at it in a retro sense, like, if you're playing a retro format, you're playing it because you're choosing to, or you're playing it because I'm covering it on the channel, and that's just what I'm covering now. You know, but after I go through a format, or after that tournament's done, you know, you're probably playing that format because you want to play that format, right? And if you want to play that format, you're looking for that sort of Tier 0 experience there that you would get from it. So I do think that, like, coming back to them in the retro sense is a lot better than playing them live. And I do think that it does make a lot of these formats a lot more palatable on sort of re-examination. It's why, like, Dragon Rule mirrors are largely considered to be very, very skill intensive and very fun for a select group of people, right? It's why Teledad is also really liked by a select group of people, because a lot of people like the Teledad mirror as well. So I do think that Tier 0 formats do get a lot better for sure over time. Looks like they're going to set down their own Reaper, prevent it from being targeted by things. It's a very interesting choice, but I don't hate it. I mean, what are you really playing around here, though? I mean, I guess you're just playing around them subbing on a big guy and attacking in. So that's something. But, like, Panda can also just get in and deal some damage there. So it's a bit awkward there. But, well, the awkward thing about Tempai, from what I've heard, is that Tempai is, like, potentially easy to disrupt and play around. And if they don't have, like, a really good hand, they might be sort of out of luck. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it will definitely be something that gets sort of borne out by people playing in these big events and seeing what the results are. But it'll definitely be very cool. But yeah, I also find it really interesting to sort of fine-tune the Chaos deck, try and play around with it. I like trying out Sorks in that deck. I think it's really cool to play some Sorks, additional Chaos Boss monsters there. Because all the Chaos Boss monsters are unsearchable. So, like, if you play more of them, then you do risk bricking on them, but you also potentially have the option to just play more of them. So it's very cool. Yeah, and I'm hoping to play in the next Chaos Cup as well. I think it should be a lot of fun. And I just find that format really fun. And I think that, like, you know, would I really enjoy it if, like, the only format going on for the next couple months that I could play was Chaos? Probably not. You know, I'd probably get tired of it. I'd probably be like, you know, I want to play something else, right? But if I'm coming back to it for like a one-off event, you know, I'm going to enjoy it. And I can just keep playing it in the monthly events until I get tired of it, right? And I think that's perfectly fine. Stein coming down here. Okay. Okay, the pressure's getting on here. Probably going for end and just tagging the Reaper, saying you got to have something here or else I win. It is a bit risky in the face of Magician of Faith, potentially. But I do like this. I do like just going for end, saying, you know, this is a 2-turn clock. If you don't have a way to stop this, I win the game, right? The awkward thing here is if the set is Magician of Faith, they can get back heavy and wipe away the entire board, which is a bit awkward, but they also have a way to get over the Stein or dealing enough damage to prevent you from winning with the end, right? They've got to have a card in hand to deal with that. And if they don't have that, then it can be a bit awkward here. So there is the potential option to go for Balter or Restrict as well. If you go for Restrict, you target the Reaper, pop it with its, or actually Reaper won't get popped. That's a bit awkward, but you can go for the set as well. This is not the finals. This is one of these semifinals matches, and whoever wins this will be going into the finals facing off against Ratos. So, yeah, very cool stuff. But yeah, I mean, it is awkward. Oh, okay, Gatling is also a good option here. Oh, and Will. Okay, that explains the Gatling pick for sure. Okay, yeah, I like this. I like this. Now, if they get all tails, then that's going to be unfortunate. But, like, the odds of getting all tails is 1/8. If it's 7/8, then there are ways to potentially get around this and potentially push for lethal in some way. So, and if there isn't, you know, you just go for the set and, you know, hope that it's like Magician of Faith or something. Looks like they got at least 1 heads, so that's going to be pretty good. And will they get 2 heads? It looks like they're going to get 2 heads here. So if you go for, I mean, it might not be the double set there. That might be a bit of a thinker, because the fact that they activate Will, they might want to get value off that Will by popping the Stein. And if you go for the Stein, bring out Cat, go into, yes, so there are some stuff you can do here. Yeah, so it is a bit interesting. You could go Stein and Reaper, for instance, and bring out like Panda plus, yeah, Panda plus Radiant, I guess would be the move. Yeah, Panda plus Radiant. You could also just go for Exiled Force from the deck here, pop that set, and get in for 26. That's an option as well. Yeah, a couple different options here. Okay, looks like they are indeed going to go for the Cat here. You can go for a Panda play here. I do like this play. I think it's a good play. It is a bit risky again if the set is Moth, but like unfortunately the sort of you know, quick destruction there did reveal it was Merchant. So, but yeah, Cat time BB. Let's see it go through. Let's see what it does. See what it do. You know, probably bring out Panda plus Radiant, I would assume. Right? But yeah. Perennian. I don't know what that means. But I hope it's not something bad. I hope we didn't say something that could get this stream demonetized. But yeah, Cat, very cool. And this is the semifinals there. Oh, it's from Neko Art. Okay, I've not done anything Melty Blood related. So I am a Fate fan, but I've not gone that far down the rabbit hole. So yeah. But yeah, it's cool to see Cat doing so well. And I think LL has been refining this deck over the past couple of days and weeks. So very, very cool to see them really taking it pretty far in this locals. And they could definitely win the entire thing at this point. They're thinking on the Cat targets, though. Very tough choice here for sure. You're not killing them this turn. I don't think there's a way you can guarantee killing them this turn. If the set is like pre-mat, you can bring back another Cat and potentially go for a win. But I think if the set was another pre-mat, yeah, you probably still go for Reaper here off the pop for the Gatling. But yeah, it is a bit tricky maneuvering like what you're actually going to bring out off the Cat here for sure. Huh. Yeah, very interesting stuff. But I'm glad to feature someone who can probably play this deck a lot better than I can, for sure. Going for a Lily. Okay, no, you can't go for Lily. Lily is not a beast. You can't go for Lily. Yeah, no Lily. It is a beast. So that is something that can come up. You can will out the Lily a lot of the time. You can rat out the Lily, but you cannot cat out the Lily. So quite unfortunate there. Looks like they're going for a Wombat and probably just a Panda, I would assume, if they're making this play. Unless they've got a knock. If they've got a knock, then they can go for the knock on the set and just go for damage here. So bring out like a Radiant or another Wombat. Looks like they're just going to go for a Radiant there. I mean, honestly, yeah, Lily is a furry, I assume, you know. I mean, oh, she's not engraved. I was going to pull up the card art, but like, I mean, you look at her, you know, you can get a sense. You can get a sense that she's probably a furry there. But yeah, I mean, Kendra does have the cat sleeves, but LL is playing the cat deck. So who's the bigger Rescue Cat fan? That's my question to you. Okay, it looks like the Radiant is going to attack in to the Merchant. Merchant unfortunately whiffs, hitting a Comfy. It's kind of rough. But now I believe there is a Light and Dark Engrave off that, so you can bring out a Chaos Stork, banish the Gatling potentially. Looks like 26 is going to drop a Kesha down to 23 here. And yeah, it's going to be a bit of a tough spot to be in. Funnily enough, the Panda off the Radiant was actually more damage here. Because, you know, you attack in with the Panda to 1300, you deal 6, and then you get in for 16 with the Wombat, so that's 22 as opposed to just 21. But it probably should be fine. Yeah, if there's Beast Warriors, why aren't there Beast Spellcasters? You know, the Beast Spellcasters make more sense because the Spellcasters can turn them into part beasts, you know? Makes sense. But yeah, no Worm Beast, it seems. Yeah, Worm Beast would have probably been the better pick there if they did have it, but a lot of the cat decks in this format don't go for Worm Beast here because they're doing other things. I have seen some decks, I believe they bring in like DD Beast or something, or the one that can banish when it attacked over things, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, I think that the Panda does make sense. Yeah, I think, and we have seen Scapegoat from Kesha's deck here. Scapegoat is at 1 though, so not the biggest thing to go into, but, and there are also 2 other Pandas left in deck, but I do think it makes sense to save the Pandas for that, for sure. Like, if you want a monster to stick on field, you probably want it to be Panda as opposed to like Wombat or something. So especially if you get a Ring of Destruction not in this format. Cylinders in this format, but like you don't really have to worry about that in general. And yeah, looks like a Sork is coming down, so that will banish the Gatling there. So Gatling going away. Quite unfortunate. But you know, LL is still in a really good spot here. Brought Catcher down to 2300 there. Yeah, for some reason they were like, Goat Control is the problem deck of the format. And to be fair, historically, I think that is true, where Goat format was a big problem. But, you know, in modern Goat format, you know, it's definitely not as big of an issue as it was back in the day. So coming from a modern perspective, it is kind of almost comical seeing how they really hit Goat Control, because the deck did not need those hits. But it is kind of interesting. Steven Eurosvik says, in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are the terms target and select interchangeable? I believe in general, if you see this old card text, it is like pretty much interchangeable in general. But I think like there might be some weird cases where they're not. Like Yu-Gi-Oh! Card text after problem solving card text gets really specific, and you know, specific things do mean specific things. So you could make the argument that like if a modern day card says select instead of target, it does not target, just selects. But yeah, realistically, I think it should be fine. Average though, very, very good there. Explains why you go for the, you know, popping Stein, popping Cat, things like that. But Hoy says Yu-Gi-Oh! Should have had dual types and attributes. MED actually did a video about dual types recently on one of their Twitter threads. I didn't really remember too much of it, but like it is something that people have thought about for a while. So he says Rex Speedman would be disappointed at what he's seeing right now. Yeah, where's the Chaos Turbo stuff? You know, gotta go harder on the Chaos Turbo. No BLS, fake format. You know, that's probably what Rex Speedman would say. I love the Rex Speedman skits that JTZ does. They're so funny, and they really do apply not just to GOAT but to a variety of formats in the game. Because you know, no matter what format you're playing, you get people like Rex Speedman running around for sure. But yeah, things are not looking like too good for LL. I mean, the pot is very good here. Bring out a Wombat, probably just hitting into the set. We have to see exactly what the set is. Oh, if you select a Reaper, does it die? Oh, for Gatling? Well, Gatling doesn't say select on it. But there probably are some cards that would say select on it. I think in that case, the Reaper probably would die. But it is a bit tricky. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, yeah, some of the card rulings are like very, very weird. But yeah, Gatling did not target, so it would just, but it doesn't say select on it either. Dead Rat is a deck that people really, really try to get into tier 1. Dead Rat is something that people consistently kept innovating on, trying to bring to the top tiers, and unfortunately never quite got there. There are just some deep flaws in Dead Rat that I think do prevent it from being like tier 1. I think it's very, very solid tier 2. I need a deck that is very, very fun to play. Very, very cool to play in this format, but unfortunately, I don't think it's just quite there. And yeah, so I don't think Dead Rat is going to be tier 1 anytime soon, unfortunately. But yeah, I'd say you're exactly right. I think Gatling also destroys on resolution. So it is non-targeting. Yeah. Gatling is banished. We can check here. So yeah, it does do it on resolution. This is the resolution right here. No targeting beforehand. So yeah. Which does make it a bit tricky. Like before they flip the coins, you've got to make some decisions occasionally when there's a Gatling staring you down. Going for another Chaos Monster here, trying to get in for lethal damage, playing potentially into Torrential Tribute, but not worrying about that. And this might just be the end of the game. They're typing in the chat, maybe asking about Prio. Yep, just GG. Yeah. That's how it goes sometimes. I mean, we saw some very, very cool plays from both players here. So very, very cool stuff. But unfortunately, it was not quite enough to let LL win the game here. But still, Rescue Cat, very, very powerful card. Very, very powerful deck. And definitely a tier 1 deck that you should be paying attention to in this format. Very, very strong. And I'm sure that LL will continue to refine and bring this deck to later events. So very, very cool stuff. But yeah, the last will turn was definitely a bit tricky. I'm not sure it really would have made a difference here for sure. I think the ideal outcome would have been 3 heads. And once you get 3 heads, you could probably go for lethal line. But only 2 is a bit awkward there. But yeah. Shining Phoenix Enforcer. I'm not sure if I'm going to be playing around with it. But I definitely will be playing around with Shining Flare Wingman for sure. But with that, we get Kesha moving on to the finals. Facing off against Aratos here. And it's going to be a pretty good one. So Aratos is on a Monarch deck. Kesha is on, it looks like a bit more of a Chaos deck. Maybe like kind of Goat Control, even though you can't really play Goat Control in this format. They are playing Metamorphosis. They are playing Scapegoat. They're playing Magical Merchant to get into those things a bit easier, I think. So still very, very cool stuff. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how this finals match turns out. And yeah, I mean, honestly, you know, I just found out how to do a poll on the, when I did the Meadowland stream. Who will win? I'm going to ask who will win. Will it be... I'm going to call this Chaos and Monarch. That's how I'll just call it. So, yeah, who will win? Chaos or Monarch? Put your votes in now. Who will win this game? We got the game going on right here. So, just in general, because one of the cards that selects a sub 1000 attack monster and allows it to attack directly could be a good combo with Reaper. Oh, you mean Secret Pass to the Treasures? Oh yeah, that is something they could potentially do. Let me look up Secret Pass to the Treasures. Secret Pass to the Treasures. Let me look this up, see exactly what it says. It does say select one face up, but I don't think it has problem solving card text. I do believe, yeah, it's only been printed in Pharaonic Guardian Dark Binding 2. I do believe that this would target. If it was printed nowadays, I do think it would indeed target. So, yeah. And it looks like people are saying Chaos. 62% say Chaos, 38% say Monarch, but definitely a chance for either to win here. Look at the Dekoishi's going to attack into a Treeborn Frog, so now Races got set up for next turn potentially. But yeah, Monarchs can definitely get a bricky hand, so it is pretty tough sometimes for Monarchs to actually win the entire format, but or the tournament. But you know, with the locals, it very well might. So yeah, that's how I would assume it would be. I mean, the best thing to do would be to ask a judge either in the YGF from Zero Discord, or you could potentially ask in like there's probably something for it on goatformat.com. They probably have rulings for it as well. But I can check that. Yeah, White Magical Hat is really cool with Secret Pass to the Treasures. You can do stuff with that. But yeah, let me check goatformat.com. Individual card rulings. If I go to Secret Pass to the Treasures, it will definitely pull up something there. Secret Pass to the Treasures. This card targets a monster. Yeah, Secret Pass does target, unfortunately. So yeah. But yeah, unfortunately, yeah, if you revive Reaper with Premat, it does just blow up because unfortunately the Premat continually targets that Reaper, and so that will destroy it. So using a Merchant to hit over a Treeborn, definitely not something I expected to see going into the stream, but you know, it's something that is happening apparently. Because Catch was just going all in on that back row saying, you don't have heavy, and if you do, I probably have a way to get around it here. But unfortunately, that Reaper is going to make things a little bit difficult for them because now they can't get in a ton of damage here, drop Aratos down below that 5,000 threshold range that you want to be at. And now it's a bit awkward here. So, yeah, it's a bit tricky. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to prevent Aratos from going for an OTK here. Although Swords definitely does help for a bit. But if Mobius comes down, pops on that back row, it might just be GG here. We'll have to see exactly what happens, though. Looks like Razor's going to pass back, say, you know, I don't really have anything to do here. No need to commit anything else, and I'll just sit on my Reaper and wait it out. Because you got to have a way to deal with Reaper. You don't have a Light and Dark Engrave. So, well, I mean, that's a way to deal with Reaper. It's also a way to deal with Frog. So it looks like they're going to banish the Frog instead of the Reaper here. I think that does make sense, honestly, because that gets you more value over time. Well, if you've got this, get the right Iggy break for the Reaper, then that also does it. And now it looks like a Dekoichi hitting in for 1,400. Getting a Reaper in graveyard, or not a Reaper, but a Frog in graveyard as well to bring back here once your Swords is gone, once your other back row is gone. Frog is really, really cool card. Can get you a lot of value over the course of the game. But yeah, I in the future, I need to remind people that these are not technically rated as default. If you and your opponent decide to do a rated thing before the game begins, then you can do it as rated. But otherwise, it is not rated. So I'll go in and undo a lot of those afterwards because, yeah, I mean, that can affect things. People do care about that. So, yeah. And I'll do a reminder as well on the next locals. And we had a bit more new people in this locals than we normally do. So I'm very happy that we got that sort of representation, new players. Very, very cool to see that. But, you know, when I do have new players, and I do need to remember to do that sort of thing. But look like they're going to take control of the Dekoichi, rip a card out of hand with Thestalos here. It's pretty good. Hitting a Morphing Jar, also pretty good. Getting another Dark Engrave because they really don't want to get a Light Engrave. So I think it makes sense to go for the Dekoichi instead of the Merchant there. And it looks like Dust Tornado coming in, hitting the Roar. Okay, that is a really good card to hit there because now they can't chain it. So, yeah, very, very good stuff. And Frog's going to come back now that the Swords is gone. Do they have a Tribute Monster to capitalize on that Frog? Looks like they're just going to set. Yeah, the Reaper Monthly will hopefully have a lot more new players. I'm hoping to get people back in to Reaper who played it back in its heyday. And, you know, maybe are willing to try it out again here. So that's the goal. I'd really like to get more people into the community playing this format and maybe any others that they might enjoy as well. So, yeah, we'll see how many people the next locals gets as well, because the locals, I think there's more interest in this locals today, but occasionally like EU time can be a factor. And this was not a good time for EU people, but we should be having it at a more amenable time to those folks this Saturday is likely when I'm going to have it because I'm planning on starting the tournament on Sunday. We may push that to Monday, depending on, you know, the tournaments that weekend. But I figure if we do a Sunday tournament, and it's a multi-day tournament, so people do have the Monday to schedule as well. I know that there are other tournaments going on that weekend, but hopefully this will allow them some flexibility there to join this tournament as well. But yeah, it's a bit tricky for Aratos here. They got to decide what to do. They know that set is probably something that can, you know, do something about that Thestalos. Otherwise, they wouldn't have committed that with the Reaper there. But yeah, were there really 40 players at the Chaos Monthly? Wow, it's kind of wild, but you know, I'd be happy if we can surpass that. That'd be really cool. Going for Zaborg here and getting rid of that Merchant. Yeah, a bit awkward, but okay, that makes a lot of sense. Going for a Will. Will for Stein, maybe, just going for it. Yeah, sometimes you just got to go for it. Stein here paying 5, bringing out End probably, and then just going for lethal that way. Unless they got a way to deal with the... oh, no, this is still lethal. Yeah. Yeah, we get 24 plus 56. Oh, but the Scapegoat. Oh, that is rough. I mean, you can clear most of those, but that is definitely not what Aratos wanted to see here at all. Ugh. Yeah, that is some rough stuff indeed. But that's a risk you got to take sometimes as the Steinarch player. But yeah, the goats coming in. Those 4 goats, you know, saving Kesha's life there. Now, Frog coming back here. And if Kesha does have a way to get in over the Stein, that's going to be really good. Going for the heavy here. Hitting a Roar. Okay, so the Roar will protect the Stein for a little bit here. But, you know, it still is an awkward spot to be in because you can't kill next turn necessarily in the easiest way either, especially if Kesha has another monster here to set down onto the field. So, yeah, not looking too good here. Okay, looks like they are banishing a Light and a Dark. Banishing probably the Twin, I would assume. Bringing out an attack is kind of interesting. I mean, that they probably would have deal with the Zaborg as well. But, yeah, 800 with a 700 attack monster is very dangerous, Hoy. Looks like they'll probably be switching that Stein to defense. No real reason to keep it in attack here. But we'll have to see exactly what Aratos does. Definitely an awkward spot to be in for sure. But Monarchs can grind out a lot of different games. So if they can manage to stabilize, grind out this game a little bit longer, then they could potentially be in a good spot overall. But definitely a rough one to be in. Definitely an uphill battle for them too. So they're going to attack into the Sork. And that will be met with a Raigeki break. Pop in that Zaborg. And yeah, it's not looking good for them here. Now, if they switch Stein to defense, they do at least, protect themselves for a turn a little bit. But it's still not looking the best. There's no real reason to attack them in token, I don't think. I mean, no real reason to attack in the Frog at all, for sure. But I think people do generally prefer Roar to Karibo in this format. I think it's just because, like, Karibo only stops one attack and Roar stops everything, which is really important. But yeah, looks like they're going to go for a Will here now. Probably bringing out a Reaper. Maybe an Exiled Force to pop the Sork. That's also an option. It's just a really awkward spot because anything you bring out can be banished with Sork here. So probably Force is, I think, the best thing that you can do. Yeah, unless they've got some other way to deal with Sork. But looks like they are going to go for the Reaper. I mean, that's going to be just kind of awkward there. Setting one, passing back. So now the Sork will have to banish the Reaper. But, like, realistically, what does this do? I feel like Force would have probably been better. But you're playing around Zaborg, I guess. But if it was Zaborg, you still got another monster here. So yeah, I don't know how I like that. Yeah, it's a bit awkward. I'm curious why they did that. Maybe they don't play Force in their deck. That could be an option as well. But yeah, you kind of just want to clear that Sork as soon as possible. Yeah, no Lights Engraved too, so you don't have to worry about the Chaos setup there. But yeah, not looking good for Aratos at all here. Yeah, this is game one. So a bit of a longer game than you might expect because, we do see Stein on field. So it's like, why isn't the game over? Well, because Scapegoat is in the macro. And again, sometimes you do have to push for that. I mean, Exiled Force, not Mirror Force. Mirror Force would be good, but it's banned in this format. So can't really worry about that. But if they're not playing Exiled Force in the deck, then it makes sense with the last build not to bring that out. But if they were playing Exiled Force, I'm kind of perplexed why they didn't just bring out Exiled Force there, pop the Sork, because it's basically the same thing as, just like they can clear the Sork there, or they can clear the Reaper there either way. So to me, that wouldn't really make sense, but I think this is ultimately fine. Going for Thessalos here, getting a big body on board, hitting in to the Sork there, and that will go through. So they are in a relatively stable position here, but the awkward thing as well about being at 800 is that pre-match shut off, BrainCon shut off. So much is shut off here. Well, I guess it's one BrainCon engraved, but if they're playing more, all those are shut off. So it's just kind of awkward here. But, sometimes you just got to sit on a big guy and hope that's enough. The Chaos deck does have a bit more inevitability here, unfortunately. But, Aratos could definitely manage to pull this one back from the brink of defeat. It really does just depend on, what they do, what they draw, and what their opponent draws as well. So the thing in here, I think what you probably want to do this turn is attacking the token. You have the read that the set is not Saku, or else they would have used it on the Thessalos attacking the Sork. The question probably here is also, do you want to go into Warrior Lady? Summon out Warrior Lady, attack into the Frog, and do that. Play into TT potentially, but you kind of got to play into TT at some point. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I probably should have said Exiled instead of Exiled instead of Force, because as you say, there are multiple forces, but I'm just so used to Mirror Force being banned in this format already that, I just call it Force. But yeah, there really are a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh fan terms for sure. And that can make it a bit awkward in conversation. I've seen some videos in the past discussing how Yu-Gi-Oh does kind of have a problem with that sort of thing, where we just, say, oh, you got an Exiled, or you got this, or like, oh, you got, like breaks or something for a Raigeki break. And it's like, for a new player coming into that doesn't necessarily know everything, it can be a bit tricky to navigate that sort of lingo. But Sidra coming down here. Sidra can clear the Stein and also get a Light Engrave for something here. It looks like they're looking at their banish, so they might actually have a return as well. They're bringing out a Reaper. Did not bode well. So they're going to attack the dragon into the Stein. Probably go for a return play here. Yep, return. Can bring back the Warrior Lady, the Merchant, and the Frog. This is not lethal, I don't think, right? Yeah, so this is not quite lethal because they attacked over the Stein with the Sidra. So now they got to attack into the Thessalos here, take 9. And then they're dealing only 600. So Outrageous is still in this, surprisingly. Kind of wild. They do lose their last card in hand off that Reaper. So I do think this was the correct play for Catcher to make here. But it's kind of crazy that, like, that it does come down to this. That's kind of wild. This is such an intense game for sure. Very, very cool stuff. It looks like all those cards getting banished there. The Reaper should also get banished, I believe. Doesn't Reaper get banished? Oh, no, that was a normal summon. They normal summon Reaper. Yeah. Yeah. The normal summon Reaper, so that does stay. I missed that. But yeah, it looks like the polls sort of evening out a little bit. We got 54% versus 46%. 13 votes so far. Chaos still winning overall in the poll, but, you know, definitely is a bit tricky here. And it looks like Outrageous summoning out that Sidra, attacking over the Reaper here. Now, if that back row doesn't do anything here, then they do lose from this because Sidra attacking to Sidra. Oh, well, Jinzo should probably wrap up the game. Unless like Book of Moon. But yeah, no, that's just going to be the end of the game there. So very, very cool stuff. And we're going on to game 2 here. Very, very intense stuff. It definitely could have gone either way there at multiple points in the game. And that's kind of surprising after a failed Stein OTK that Monarch could last so long after that. But, you know, Monarch is a very good deck for a reason. And we got to see that there. So very cool stuff indeed from that game. But yeah, it was Jin's over. It was just Jin's over. I mean, the back row might have been dead because you could figure, like, if it was something, they probably would have used it on the DD War Lady attacking into the Thestalos. So, yeah, back row's probably dead. But, yeah, no Trinity. Yep, no Trinity in this format, so no Trinity in these games, which is quite refreshing if you're coming at it from a GOAT perspective. So, and that's honestly one of the reasons why so many people flocked to Reaper format in the first place. Because, you know, they were really happy with not having to deal with Trinity, not having to deal with BLS. So it made for a format that they were hoping was a bit healthier than GOAT. I'm not sure you'd say it's necessarily healthier than GOAT in the modern day, but I do still think it's fun. I think a lot of people jumped ship because they were like, this is not what I was expecting in the beginning. It was not like GOAT, but better. But it is its own thing and its own fun thing too. So I do think that more people should give this shot a chance, or give this format a shot, is what I was trying to say. Occasionally I stumble over my words like that. But if you do want to give this format a shot, definitely head over to the YGO from Zero Discord server, linked in the description down below. But we will be having another locals in this format next week if you want to play in that. And we'll also be having a monthly tournament for this format as well. So it should be a lot of fun. So I encourage you to hop on over if you like this sort of thing. Also, if you want to see more Reaper content, definitely subscribe to the channel. I'd really like to reach 1,500 subscribers by the end of June. I think that should be a good goal to reach because we're already, you know, part of the way there. So it would be really cool to reach that by June. And I'm getting a little bit started early in May. You know, last day of May, might as well start going for the June goal too. So seems like there's a bit of lag here. Maybe Catcher's DCing, maybe something like that. But for some reason, Outrageous cannot see the hand yet off that Comfy. So they're just playing a Comfy dance here. You know, having it, you know, wander around the field a little bit. And there we go. Seems like they will be looking at the hand now. Soul says, not having the combination of staple draw power plus hand rip makes Reaper a different experience. I agree 100%. I do think this is a very, very different experience as well. Steven Rosovic asks, do I ever play in paper? I would like to play in paper. I just don't really have any, you know, IRL friends who play the game. So there's never really been an impetus for me to make a paper deck, unfortunately. One of the best things about Retro Yu-Gi-Oh! Though is the ability to make these decks in paper. So it's definitely something that I've been thinking about. And if we ever do like in-person events, which, you know, some people in the Discord server have talked about, you know, potentially the upsides, downsides of that sort of thing. If we ever do in-person events, I'll definitely have some paper decks on hand for that. But I do find paper play really, really fun. Very different experience from online. But unfortunately, you know, I just don't have the IRL connections for that as much. But yeah, very, very cool way to play for sure. And there are people like, I know Totagon has a YouTube channel and they're doing a bunch of retro content in paper, and that's pretty cool too. But yeah, very powerful play, exactly, Gerbil. Normal summon Comfy, one of the most busted plays in the format. But I do hope that people do jump into this format and enjoy it once people play for its own qualities, exactly as Hoy says. I really do think that this format does have a lot of room for growth, and it's really, really fun as well. But yeah, yeah, Painful Choice is a really good card to buy for these old formats. Very, very fun card and very good card as well. And it might get more popular as well if these formats get more popular. I think of the formats that would get popular, I think the one that has the, or at least that I've covered, the one that has the most potential to is probably Yada. because Yada is just like, it's very different from Goat. So it's not like Warrior. And so like you don't have to compete with Goat there. But like also it's its own thing. It's really fun. It's classic DM era stuff. Games go really back and forth. Really, really cool stuff. I highly encourage anyone out there who hasn't played Yada to try it out because it is really fun. It's one of those formats that you think will be busted going into it, but then you play it around and it's really, really good. So that's a format that I think could definitely grow the most, and Painful is a staple in that format. So very good pickup here. But yeah, I would like to do eventually an IRL event. I think that'd be really fun. Unfortunately, I don't think we're quite at the place where that would be a feasible thing for us to do right now. But I think it would be really cool eventually. And, in paper play, really, really fun way to bring the community together, playing these events, playing these formats. And it is just such a different experience than online. So it's really, really fun. But I do think that Warrior is also something that can get popular. The issue holding it back is that I do think that some people will view its similarity to Goat almost as sort of like something to compete about, right? Where it's like, oh, I can only play Warrior or Goat. I can't play both, And I don't necessarily have that view. I think you can play either and still enjoy them. But yeah, that's something that I could see happening potentially. Chris S., thank you so much for the shout out. Glad you're enjoying the vids. And yeah, I sort of make them partially so that people can enjoy them like podcasts in a way, which is kind of weird to say because I've got a ton of gameplay in them. So like some of it you do have to kind of watch, but like I make long form content partially because I know that I like things on in the background a lot. And so I do think that it is just really, really fun and something that I enjoy listening to. So if I can make something for people out there like you to also enjoy it, then I'm happy to do so. But yeah, Balter, really, really good card off the Sidra. Using that one meta, but it seems like it's pretty worth it here for Balter. It doesn't get over Reaper, unfortunately, but it can stop Catcher from getting these powerful flip effects off like Morphing Jar there. So very, very good stuff there. But Zia said the Portugal Naturals had Snake Eyes at 50% representation. Do you think the current game will be improved if the July lists are coming? I think it's one of those things where like Snake Eyes has been around for long enough that Konami's probably okay hitting it a bit. So I do think the game could be improved, but we've definitely seen some pretty tone-deaf lists from Konami in the past. So if they don't hit Snake Eyes at all, then it could definitely be a bit of a rough format. It could also be sort of a thing where like they unlimit cards that other decks have as well, and make those decks more viable to play against it. But yeah, it's a bit of an interesting thing. Tributing for Thestalos here, I'm not necessarily sure. I guess does Soul Exchange force you to tribute in this format? Maybe that's why they did. Maybe they're playing around Sidra. That's also a reason. Balter is a bit worse in this format because Sidra is around. But yeah, Snake Eyes could be something like Zodiac where they just, take forever to actually hit it. But yeah, congrats on your newborn, Chris S. That's great. So yeah, I mean, that's awesome. Yeah, raise him right on Yu-Gi-Oh! Raise him or her right, or whatever your newborn is, raise them right on Yu-Gi-Oh! Should be fun. And I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a great game for kids as well, especially these earlier formats. Just playing it, it's a nice nostalgic connection to the kids, just playing a game that you played yourself. So yeah, it's really, really awesome to see there. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the Zodiac formats as well. Like, I like a lot of the formats that I haven't actually, played myself. So that's pretty cool. Juan Ramiro says, I don't care if Snake Eyes stays untouched as long as they free my girl Master Plan. Get Spiral back on those charts, Spiral, I think, is a really, really cool deck. And I wouldn't be upset if they unlimited Master Plan. That would be pretty cool. But Gerbil says, that sounds like the backstory they'd give to a GX character. Yeah, we're trying to make the next Hasselberry here, get some Dino DNA in them, except Yu-Gi-Oh! DNA in them, But yeah, I think some of the later sets will also probably shake things up as well. I've heard some big stuff coming with those. So yeah, that could also help. But there's a lot of different things that can go into making the upcoming format a bit different. But Ben also says, Yu-Gi-Oh! Helped me with my critical thinking ahead. Critical thinking, or thing you had, critical thinking, sorry, I mixed up those, and problem-solving skills when I grew up as a kid. Yeah, that really helped me a lot as well. I was a big math guy back in the day, and I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Sort of helped fuel my love of math and science, because I do think that it really does teach a lot of problem-solving techniques, and it's a great way to sort of work out your mind a bit, as well as having a blast. So yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh! Can also be great for learning other languages as well, Hoy. He doesn't just go for English, although English is probably the most accessible one to do because there are a lot of, English Yu-Gi tubers, and also, there are a fair amount of available cards in English as well. But if anyone's learning a language and you sort of get cards in that language, it can also be helpful because you know the effects in other languages, so you can sort of figure it out for those as well. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just so cool as a kid just going to these events and stuff, and you make a lot of great friends that way. So I definitely encourage it. It's another social activity, and it's really fun. And, yeah, I hope that there are still, regionals, SJCs, etc. Or I guess they still are they still called SJCs? I don't actually know. I think they're YCSs now. But, I think it'd be really cool if by the time that they're grown up, there are still those tournaments going around, because I would like the game to last as long as possible. I think, I'm curious to see where it will continue to grow. But even if it does potentially stagnate in the future, or it becomes unprofitable and they don't make any more, I'll still have fun playing it with everyone online. And yeah, it should be a lot of fun. But Gerbil said they also started doing English printings specifically for Asian markets. Yeah, and that's a great way for people in those audiences to also learn the language too. But yeah. Calamity. Is that like the gimmick puppet stuff, like with the FTKs now? But yeah, older formats are a great way to potentially save the game as well. If Konami puts resources into doing the older formats, into the Time Lizard stuff, it definitely can be a bit of a bigger thing than it is, and can also draw in new players, which is pretty good. But yeah, I think it. I only really played when they had SJCs as well. I never really played in the YCS era either. But like, it's basically the same thing, I think. But oh, it's the Jack Atlas synchro. Okay, yeah. I always forget. It's like Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King of Calamities or something. But yeah, I've heard that can be a bit degenerate, but I also heard that it's not the most consistent thing in the world. So yeah, it's one of those things that's probably not as, like, it's sort of like Stein, right? It's a scary thing in the format, but is it the best deck in the room? Is everyone going to play it in the tournaments? Then maybe not. But, again, these sort of things can continue to be iterated on, explored more. And who knows, maybe in the future it will turn out to be the best thing in the world. I know they've been printing a lot of scary gimmick puppet stuff that can potentially lead to some FTKs there, which is a bit scary. But, like, yeah, there are hand traps now. I do think hand traps are kind of necessary for the modern game, even though some people do hate them. But they are kind of something where it's like, if you don't have hand traps, then you allow these decks to sort of combo off and do whatever they want. But I'll have more opinions on hand traps when I get to that period of the game, for sure. But I do think that, like, I'll approach it with an open mind, because I always approach all of these formats with an open mind. You never know whether you're going to like something. Even if you didn't like it at the time, you might like it now. You never actually know. But as a thought, I don't remember when that was out, but that was a very interesting FTK thing as well. So very, very cool stuff there. Yeah, there's been a lot of interesting stuff going on in this game. I unfortunately have not been talking about it, but we've been talking more about the modern state of the game, which does happen occasionally on these streams. We sort of ramble from thing to thing while having the gameplay on in the background, but this has been a very interesting game. We know that Tsukiyomi is in rotation, dealt with the Kaiku last turn, can deal with the Mobius here potentially this turn, and that can be pretty good. So Raisis has to know about that. Probably deciding how do they deal with that, because if Tsukiyomi comes down here, hits over the Mobius, then Reaper can get in for a rip next turn. So they're setting a monster to block off that Reaper potentially. And that Tsuk just keeps coming down. Tsuk will probably eat the Mobius this turn for sure. And then you probably keep the Reaper in defense, I would assume, unless you got like a knock as well here. But yeah, Tsuk coming down, eating the Mobius. And that's going to be pretty rough. Oh, knock on the new set. Okay. Yeah, hitting a tomato. That's a really good knock there. And now going in for a Reaper attack. Yeah, it's going to be pretty brutal for Aratos here. Hitting over the Mobius, hitting in for 3, and also ripping a card out of that hand. So yeah, brutal stuff here for sure. What will they rip? They'll rip a Will. Okay, that's maybe not the best card for Aratos in this position, because they don't necessarily have the pieces to combo with it here. But yeah, very tricky position to be in for sure. I'm not sure what Aratos has to really get out of it. Now, Ketcha is at 3,800, so they are very low. So there are some potential pushes that they can make to just win. For instance, if they get Stein here, this is just the end of the game, because you can attack over the Reaper and deal a ton of damage there. But yeah. Oh, I didn't know that Master Duel was getting rid of, are they getting rid of the Snake Eyes stuff or the Calamity stuff? But yeah, if Master Duel is getting rid of something, it probably, days are probably numbered in the TCG as well. Because, Konami, they've pay attention to what's going on in Master Duel. They pay attention to what's going on in the OCG. They pay attention to what's going on in TCG. And they sort of like, you know, balance things based on some of those differences there. But Premat here, what is Premat getting? It's getting a Sidra here instead of going for a Monarch. This plays around the Souk. I do think that this is the correct play here. Less damage, but, you know, the Souk coming down and flip down the Sidra can't get over the Souk that way. So, or can't get over the Sidra that way. So, I do think it's probably the right play. Maybe the only play that they have. But, you know, you do what you have to do. And now Ketcha's down to 2,000. And Rages potentially set up a defensive here. So, Ketcha does have card advantage. But the question is, can they leverage that into a win before Rages kills them? So, that is the question. We'll have to wait and find out. But Souk, unfortunately, will not really do much here. Dark Hole will be pretty good here, wiping away the Reaper and the Sidra. Potentially getting in for some damage here, getting them out of the Stein threshold. Reaper, or no, probably Sangan or Tomato. Yeah, it looks like they're going Tomato. I think that makes sense. I think you can also go Sangan here just to get a search off that guaranteed. But Ketcha is the control deck, I would say. Monarchs can do a bit of a control game for sure, but Ketcha's just got the chaos control stuff, you know. Oh, and actually BrainCon, yeah, that will be the end of the game. So Sangan actually might have been the better pick here, although Ketcha could still have a way to get out of that. Karibo! Was not expecting Karibo there. But, you know, it did come up, you know, and they had to be bricking on something. But, yeah, it did come up here, stopping that damage from going through and being lethal. And now they're able to bring out a Souk, flip down the Tomato. They do lose the Premat that way, but the Premat is now gone. So that way they don't have to worry about like an MST or something. But yeah, it's going to be, is that, no, not the end of the game because they're at 12 here. But yeah, it is rough. Yeah, there goes the Premat. But yeah, this is going to be a bit tricky here. I don't think Souk should have been summoned last turn. Because if you summon Souk, then you can't attack with the Tomato that turn because Tomato was summoned that turn. So then you want to get in the damage when you can here. But yeah, break on the set will do it. And that's going to be the end of the game here. So congratulations to Kesha for winning this one. Very, very intense games for sure. Definitely not how I expected it to go because 2-0 is definitely not typical against this sort of deck. Generally, if it can go first a couple times, then it's pretty good. But yeah, very, very interesting game. Very, very good stuff from both players here. I think this was a great game showcasing both these cards. What was the face down card? That's a very, very good question. I'm not sure if they're going to flip it or not, but we can dive into the replay and see here. Let's go next game. Whoopsies. We go, oh yeah, it's just 2-0. So yeah, we'll fast forward here. But yeah, the Karibo was the huge clutch there. So yeah, rough stuff there. And yeah, so we get to see sort of what's going on here from both players' perspectives, just getting to that final card. But yeah, I mean, again, this was great, great stuff from both players. Great play, exactly as Soul says. And yeah, if you enjoy this sort of content and you enjoy seeing this sort of great gameplay, definitely subscribe to the channel. Definitely head over to the YGO from Zero Discord server. And yeah, congratulations to all the poll voters who voted for Chaos. You were correct. Very, very close poll, but in very, very close games, to be fair. But you did win. So very, very cool stuff here. And again, very, very good plays from both players. Cool to see this happen like this. Yeah. Steven Respect says, what is the most baffling card I've covered so far? Very, very good question. It's a bit tricky. I'm trying to think. There definitely have been some cards where I've just been like, why would you do that? It doesn't even work with the archetype that you've got. There have been some cards that have been like, why would you do that? It doesn't even make sense to even have this as a card because it's just like there's no use case for this really. Yeah, I think of the latest cards for sure, it's probably success probability 0%. That card's just really, really bad. All it does is just cause headaches for us on this manual simulator. Yeah, I could make a compilation of them, honestly. I think people generally like to see that sort of thing because it is funny to sort of see what just bad cards I get tilted at, right? I mean, I think the Lost Millennium had a ton of them where I was just like, why would you print this? Why would you print all these cards in one set? Guardian Statue, that's a very good one because Guardian Statue is just worse Golem Sentry. No reason to play Guardian Statue. It's just worse Golem Sentry. Why would you do it? You know? So there are just some weird things like that. Looks like the last card here was a Cyberstein, just a dead Cyberstein, unfortunate. Last set was a Last Will, so it doesn't quite do it here. So yeah, Yep, I lose sanity points every time I make some of those videos, but that's part of the fun of them, is, you know, seeing how those games go. But that will do it for the tournament. Rata's not winning, Kesha winning. So congratulations to Kesha. Yeah, Pot of Generosity. Well, see, Pot of Generosity I kind of get, right? If you're playing Last Will decks, and doing stuff like that, then Pot of Generosity you can put back in combo pieces. So I kind of get Pot of Generosity. Like, it makes some sense to me. I don't get things that, like, are just inferior versions of other cards like Guardian Statue. Things like success probability 0%, where there's no real use case for them. Besides just getting completely lucky with success probability 0%. But, like, yeah, there's some weird things like that. So, yeah, definitely tricky stuff. But, yeah, very, very good games here from both players. And I'm going to call this stream here. But if you want to see more like these, definitely subscribe to the channel, as I mentioned. Also, if you want to play in more events like this in the future, definitely head on over to the YGO from Zero Discord server, linked in the description of the video. I hope you enjoyed the stream. As always, look forward to more Reaper content coming out on this channel. And, yeah, try out the format for yourself if you haven't played it. And, yeah, I look forward to chatting with y'all in the next stream. And until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero. I'm signing off.